Well, hello everybody. How are we doing back out there whoops, we got to go all the way back. I had my presentation on the wrong screen, but welcome
Oh,
to
oh,
Takeo After Dark, episode 5. The return, no,
yep.
not the return of the Jedi. What was episode 5? That was the Empire Strikes Back. Well, we're
Well,
not the Empire,
I
we're not the
couldn't tell you.
Jedi. We're just Takeo, and we're a bunch of guys that like to talk about plumbing and heating, and that's what we're going to do tonight. Welcome everybody. I'm John Barba, and joining me is my good friend and compatriot and the star of tonight's show, Mr. Rick
God.
Mayo. How you doing there, Rick?
Good. Thanks, John.
All right, the Rickster is going to be telling you all about domestic hot water recirculation tonight, the essentials of domestic hot water recirculation. Trust me, this is going to be very worthwhile because there's some things. If that's part of your business, man, it's something. There's stuff tonight that you're going to absolutely have to know for the good of the pipes, right? If nothing else,
Yep.
just for the good
For
of the
pipe's sake.
for the pipe's
For-
sake, right? For the
For
pipe's
pipe's
sake.
sake.
And we're going to go over that tonight. And also joining us, who's off stage at the moment, but enter stage right, is John Messenbrink of Mechanical
Hey,
Hub.
John.
John, are you there?
I'm here, guys. How are you?
Good, John. Good to not
Hey.
see you. I don't know where you are, but it's good to not. It's always good to see you. I take that back. But
John,
how
thanks.
are you doing? And what's going on with Mechanical Hub this week?
Oh, I thought you wanted me to come on and talk about like pump curves and things like that. But
Hey,
I'll
why
let
not?
Might as
No.
well.
No, thanks. We always appreciate this every Wednesday night. We look forward to it. It's awesome. We love the attendance. We got really good numbers. And what's going on with the site? We update it every day with new things, information that plumbing, heating, hydronic, mechanical contracts would really be interested in learning about and reading new products, new podcasts, you name it. So again, thanks for putting this on every week. It's really cool. Look forward to tonight. And then next week is St. Patty's Day celebration. I mean, come on.
Ooh, boy, it's going to be a big show. It's going to be
Big show, really big show.
big show next week. And this
Yeah.
is where we need your guys' help. I'm going to tell you the specifics of what we need to do next, what I need from you guys this week in preparation for next week. I'm going to do that in just a few minutes. But as we get started, I just want to lay this out before Rick takes over the con. Again, if you're a first timer here, you know this by heart. You don't need my help. But if this is your first time, the expanded control panel, if you just take a look on your the right-hand side of your screen, you should see this. If the arrow is pointing to the left, then all you see is the arrow. Click on that arrow and the screen will expand. And this is your control panel. You've got your audio selections there. And this is for those of you who are on a desktop computer. You've got your audio selections there, so your speakers and whatnot. There's handouts. There's a handout section, and we have 4 handouts for you tonight. Actually, technically 5 handouts for you, but 4 specific for tonight's program. So make sure you download those at some point over the next few minutes so you'll have those available to you. And then down at the bottom, we have the question section. So I see Dwight, Anthony, Harry, and Richard the 2 Anthonys and Richard have figured out how to do that. Just so I know that you guys can hear me, just go on in and say hi, hello, how are you? Good evening, Mr. Trotter. How you doing there, David? Just type in a little hi, hello, how are you? That way I know you guys can hear me and I know you know how to use this. So very good. Jimmy DePalma, Joe Matlock, Abdulaziz, very good. Excellent. Very good. Very good. You guys got it. So we've got that part down. Now, the other part is if you are on a phone or tablet, it's going to look a little bit different. It's going to look kind of like this. On the lower left-hand side, there's a little screen there, and you click, you tap that, and you'll go back and forth between the webcams and the presentation. There's your audio settings down there, attendees not enabled, and then that little question mark, that's going to be how you'd ask questions there as well. So
Very good.
Again, make sure you've got that part all down for you. The St. Patty's Day extravaganza, as John mentioned, this is a big deal. This is next week's finale for the winter season. The spring season is going to start sometime in April, but the winter season we're going to wrap up on St. Patty's Day, and we've got actually another announcement I want to share with you as well. But the St. Patty's Day extravaganza, this is going to be a pay it forward kind of program. We want you to help drive this program. We want you to share with us and with the group your best job site tips, tricks, shortcuts, hacks, anything that you've learned over your career that's helped you, and share it with the rest of the group and see what pay it forward. You share, they share, we all share, and everybody wins. What the dealio is, you'll see it pop up on the screen here, is if we pick your tip or trick to share on the class, you're going to get a prize. The best one that we get, which you guys are going to vote on, is going to get that gift pack right there, that really sweet Takeo Yeti cooler, hats, mugs, you name it. There's going to be a whole batch of stuff in there. Basically everything Dave's got in his garage, he's going to throw as much as he can cram into that Yeti cooler. That's what you're going to get.
You can make your own Takeo stand.
Say, beg pardon?
I said you can make your own Takeo stand.
There you go. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, definitely. If you want, there's a lot of ways to do this. You can email me, you can email Rick, you can email Dave. If you go on Instagram and post it on Instagram, you just tag us, Takeo-Comfort, Takeo Training, or J Barba Takeo Trainer. You can email them, you can, any way you have to get that to us, please do, and we'll make sure to include it in our show, and you could win a wicked cool prize pack. The other surprise I have for you for next week, and you are the first people to hear this, is after that first hour where we share all this stuff, for the second hour, we're going to have two very special guests that will be here really to answer whatever questions you might have, and they're really special. We're going to have Cheryl, Cheryl Merchant, the CEO of Takeo Comfort Solutions, as well as Johnny White Jr., the owner of Takeo Comfort Solutions. I'm not entirely sure how and where else you could go where you could actually get to interact with the CEO and owner of a major hydronics manufacturer, hydronics and plumbing manufacturer. So they'll be here to answer whatever questions you guys have. And if you have ever met Johnny or Cheryl, A, they're going to shoot from the hip, B, they're going to tell it to you straight, and C, it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun. So you're going to want to make sure you make that one next week. That's going to be a great show next week. Yeah, we need a whole extra hour for that one. Absolutely. Because, that's when you got two folks like that A, have a lot to say, and B, enjoy saying it and enjoy sharing it and enjoy interaction with customers. It's going to be a special, special night. And it's St. Patrick's Day, so I don't know what's going to happen beyond that.
Irish car bombs? No, just
no.
Yeah.
All right, very good. I am going to now turn it over to Rick because it is showtime. Mr. Mayo, are you ready?
Yeah, I'll send it on over here. I'll
give
it a shot. Show my screen.
You are up, buddy.
All right. Let's see if that all comes up the way it's supposed to. Looking good, I'll assume.
Looking good. Take it away.
It's all happening at the zoo. Let me get rid of that for now. Okay, well,
go get 'em.
John's already kind of gave you a heads up on what we're going to talk about. So this is actually just a clip out of like a 4-hour session. So, just understand that we're going to go, fairly quick through this session like we normally do. We try to do about an hour here and then open it up. So I'm not going to hurry. I'm just going to go through these slides a little bit at a time. I pulled out some select ones, and then we're going to spend some time on this app here. So here's what we're going to do. There's issues within, as John was alluding to, and we were going to save the pipes, right? There's some issues going on within domestic hot water systems, and more specifically about the velocity that we're moving water through those systems. And so we'll hopefully give you an idea of what the people who make those products, like copper and PEX, etc., what they say about this too. Because really what we're trying to do is follow their lead in saying, folks, there's issues, and we need to start saying, whoa, Nelly, to the pump sizing. So hopefully you get where we're going with that. So as far as controlling the systems, some of you already know about some of the products that Takeo has. We're not going to do a whole lot of product, but by all means, we're going to mention, what we have to help stop some of these problems. We'll get to this point where you'll see these 4 leading causes of this problem, and one of them has to do with just letting the pump spin. So we'll talk about the smart plug or any of the smart products that Taco has for domestic hot water. We'll bring that up as well. And then we'll spend a good portion of time showing you the domestic hot water app. Some of you may have seen it, some of you haven't. It's actually always under construction, and we're always, we'll get some tips from folks to make it better, and we'll, just go through that app again, and we'll do a couple different projects. As John mentioned, we got some handouts. I've got one that's a regular tank style, and then I've got one that's a tankless style, and we'll go through both of those and make sure you feel comfortable with using the app. Again, we did that app for a reason. We want you to use it, so we're going to promote that a bit as well. And as already mentioned, there's handouts, so grab those. You don't need them, in fact, I want you to kind of mostly pay attention to what I'm saying, but I might reference a couple. So, if you do want to print them off and put them off to the side, I might have you look at them at a certain time, and we'll jump in when we need to. So anyway, so why is the system failing? That's part of this segment, and usually that's what we're trying to do, is set the hook. Oh, system's failing. Well, you can do a simple web search to come up with this same information I have. This shows some copper pipes that have experienced some velocity erosion, erosion corrosion actually, and you can see right through this one, the wall of this one right here. Those are holes right in the side, and many of you, I would say, throw Johnny, since I can't see the questions, give a response. How many have actually been out and witnessed it, and how many have actually been out and had to replace pieces or portions of piping system that have all of a sudden sprung a leak like this? So what we're talking about now. And I'm not going to just.
I have.
Well, yeah, I can raise my hand too. Yeah. So that's why I think most of you can relate, and that's the reason I put the pictures up there, just to say, yeah, this stuff does exist. But we're going to actually, really look at why it happens. And I'm not going to just pick on the Copper Development Association, right? They make good products. It's been out there for many, many, many decades, working just fine. So it's not inherent to an issue with the manufacturing of a product. It's how we're putting systems together and not understanding some of the ramifications of high velocity. So, okay, like I said, I'm not going to just pick on the copper people. The people that sell the plastic piping are concerned as well. So, you can look at any of the manufacturers that you support, that you buy their product, and somewhere in their design manual, they will talk about what we're talking about tonight. So you could use that to back it up. Taco makes circulators and some other neat little control components and stuff, but we're trying to look after the industry as well. So look, take a closer look. Plastic piping people have issue with some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight as well. So, take a look at that. It's not just the PEX people either. I mean, I'm showing a cutaway of a piece of polypropylene, and there's some issues, and the manufacturers that make this product, good product, but there are some things they want you to look out for as well. Some of those things we're going to cover tonight as well. So anyway, just a little, grab you kind of thing. So let's look at some of the cause and effect, and I'm going to put out these 4 contributing factors that I want you to keep an eye out for, and this is where we'll get into the meat of things. Again, this is a small segment out of a 4-hour class, so let's look at kind of the heart of why the system's failing. And I'll put this first one up and just kind of give you an idea that the water temperatures, one way or another, are going to get elevated, right? You folks have heard of Legionella and Legionnaire's disease, and that's not going away. In fact, right now, today, I was on several segments of the Hot Water Forum. That happens every year. It used to be in person, but just like everybody else now, we've got to do this remotely. But I sat through a couple of those segments, and I pick up a little bit of something every time I sit through some of those, and this is one of them. That the Legionella is still an issue, and we the realistic way to deal with it in our industry. There's other ways of like dosing some chemicals in the hot water lines, and then you still have to pump it around, and there's some other gadgetry that you could do. But what seems to make the most sense, and most people will generally agree, is that we're going to elevate the temperature of the water. Notice a couple things. We got Legionella growth range down here from 68 to 122 or 20 to 50 C, right? So that's the Legionella growth range. Notice right to the left here, I've noted the ideal Legionella growth range from 95 to 115 or 35 to 46 C. So now just think about those temperatures. Now, wouldn't you say that some of your water heaters, hopefully not, but some of your water heaters, people's like, I'm going to save money and I'm going to, turn my water heater down into a range that's somewhat less than 120. This is my point, right? 195 to 115 Fahrenheit is the ideal growth range for that. So, be careful of that. But more, I guess my point is here, more than just the tank style water heaters. What if I have the elements of the supply portion of the hot water system out there? Do you suppose the temperature ever gets on the hot side, drops down in a range of 95 to 115? And of course, it does, and it's problematic, right? We got biofilm, we got stuff that lines the inside of pipes that don't get used much, where all the critters can grow and that sort of thing. Folks, what we're saying is that the industry is going to lead us to actually having hot water out in the wall, right? Right behind the fixtures. Eventually, the water is going to be elevated. It could already be right now from people that don't use mixing valves and just let their water heater kind of cycle up, thermally cycle, the whole flywheel effect. So potentially we're going to see hot water out there, and that's one of the contributing factors. Now, don't get me wrong either. I'm not saying if you run at 138, you're safe, right? This is just a number they're using, and to say, hey, when we start seeing waters elevated up in the range of 140, potentially that is a contributing factor. Okay, let's look at velocities. Now, remember, velocity in our world speaks of how quickly the fluid is actually moving through the pipe. If you could see a bubble and follow it left to right, you're going to count in seconds how quickly it's moving. We used to like to say and tell people in closed loop heating systems, we like to see the flows be 4 foot or less in feet per second. So you can, imagine a 4-foot piece of pipe and count 1001 as the water moves 4 feet. So 4 feet per second, that kind of tells us that's like a limiting factor on velocity on closed loop heating system. Now, when we start talking about domestic hot water, we're strategically talking about a portion of the system, and that portion of the system is the dedicated return or common return portions of a multiple zoned area. So that is where it tends to have the problem with velocity, erosion, corrosion, or oxidation of the plastic pipe, et cetera, et cetera. So we're talking about a specific area, and I'll show that we're not just going to say that. We'll show you why these manufacturers are kind of calling that section out. Okay, so notice that I have 2 feet per second, or in parentheses, I've got 3. And I'll show you what I mean by that. One of the manufacturers gives you a little bit of leadway based on what they put in writing, right? We used to always say, if it's not in writing, it hasn't happened. So you'll see as I start pulling up some of these documents, you'll see what the manufacturers are doing. John likes to call it the get out of jail free card. And I agree with that. That's just covering your rear end in writing to make sure that if anything does come up, they're not going to point the finger at you, or they might, but you'll have a pretty easy get out on that one. So the other thing is chlorines, chloramines, all that other stuff that they put in on a municipal level to help kill the bugs, right? We got the bugs out there that we're going to try to keep from ingesting in our system. So we put chemicals in the water. Of course, that's chemicals in the water is still the chemicals in the water when we put it either in a tank or run it through a tankless and elevate the temperature. So again, these are contributing factors. Kind of think of it like the perfect storm scenario where all these perfect things are come together. Now, again, I'll reemphasize the fact that just say, oh, if I, just keep my water temperature at 120, I'll never have a problem. Well, I can't say that. Again, I'm not the one with the lab coat doing all these testing. So a lot of this stuff comes together, and this is just giving you a heads up. The other thing, this is kind of my pet peeve, probably more than anything, is people just plugging a pump in and letting it run. We know it happens, right? And people just not knowing what the velocity is, turning the circulator on by plugging it in the wall because they got tired of their, kind of their archaic timers, whether they're digital or if they're an analog with the little switches on it. People just can't figure them out. They get tired of remember to plug them in or unplug them, or power outages and resetting and going on holidays or vacation. They just forget all that stuff, and finally they just plug it in or turn it on and let it rip, right? So again, that's part of the problem because of the velocities that are related by doing that, not knowing. Okay, so anyway, I'm encouraging you to, Taco's talking about this because Taco makes circulators and we want to teach you how to size them and such. But I encourage you to talk to the people that make the pipe too. I'm reasonably sure they're singing the same song here. Okay. So what are some of these fundamental things that we want you to, these little nuggets? Okay. And again, some of this seems like wow. I thought everybody knew that, but there's a reason I'm putting it on the slide, is because everybody does not know some of these conceptual fundamentals. Okay. What is the job description of a domestic hot water circulator within the system? Okay. That's a good question, right? What is its responsibility? There's people that have misunderstood this, especially when we get into light commercial applications, sometimes maybe full-blown commercial applications, where they actually think the circulator that they're sizing has something to do with the hot water coming out of the faucet up at the fixtures or the furthest fixture, whatever, which in reality has nothing to do with that. All we're doing, folks, remember, the pump wants to make sure that the water is already sitting there. It doesn't even have to be running. If the hot water is behind the wall at the fixtures and I open the faucet, I'm going to have that reasonably or usably warm water within less than 10 seconds. That's kind of like somebody's done a good job. But if we were to sit here and wait 10 seconds, 10 seconds is a long wait as well. But maybe some of you can relate to your own homes and how long you're waiting for hot water. A lot of people, like, in showers, they turn the shower on, they go do something else, nature calls, or, they go heat up their towels in the dryer, or, all kinds of crazy stuff, waiting for hot water. Now, if you were to measure that hot water, you'd be surprised, and you'd see where some of the numbers come from and how much water we're going down the drain. You think, oh, that's useless water. Well, it used to be hot, so that starts nailing some things down. I think the kind of the number that everybody's touting is 12,000 gallons a year for a family of 4 goes down the drain, never gets used. Okay, you're paying for that water coming in, you're paying for it going out in sewer, you're paying to heat it up with BTUs to raise it up, 80, 90, 100 degrees. So that water is precious, especially where you're living. I'm in Nevada now. The water is real precious, and we try not to waste it as best we can. And this will bring it around. Okay.
Rick,
once somebody opens up the fixture, again, now we're saying that the circulator's done its job. It's brought hot water and flushed out the hot water pipes behind the wall. So when I open the faucets, I have hot water coming out just based on the pressure differential of, I'm at 0 pressure in gauge pressure at the lavatory, and I've got 40, 50, 60 pounds behind the wall. So believe me, I know this sounds crazy that somebody like wouldn't get this concept down, but folks, believe me, we've been sitting in lunch and learns and things like that, and they're talking about, they're trying to size the pump based on fixture units and other things like that. It's just just an idea that's you know, misinterpreted basically. So that's why we're focusing on it. Okay, it has
Rick,
a
we have
lot
a
to
couple, I have a couple
Okay,
comments I want to share
okay,
with you.
great.
One was, and I think you're going to be getting to this. So what's the maximum velocity you want to see in PEX? That was one.
Okay,
I'm pretty
yeah,
sure you're going to be getting to that one.
we're gonna tell you, and we're gonna show you, and we're gonna give you a handout for a quick reference later.
Hot dog. Very good. Very good. Say from Bob Dressler, residential water heaters don't go that high. What do you do for Legionella in this case? I think what you were talking about, those, water heaters are for Legionella purposes. They may not get up to 158 to 172, but
No,
but 140
right,
is
140
common.
kills it in 32 minutes, right? So reasonably, you know, and remember how water heaters will tend to thermal cycle. They'll do
Hmm.
that flywheel effect. So you might even get higher than that just based on the inertia of energy inside the tank, right?
Right.
Now, like right now, I've got an electric water heater. I moved out of Utah. I'm down in Nevada, and that electric water heater has a 150 aquastat on it. So that's where you think I got mine set. Okay, so anyhow, anything else, John?
No, just everybody saw Dave Holdorf jump in, and he logged in as me, so everybody saw two John Barbas, which,
There's only one John
when you
Barba.
think, if you think of this, two of us, who's going to clean up after us? It's just not a pretty sight. So Dave finally, I guess he woke up from his nap and realized he overslept, and now he's with us. Thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Dave, thanks for joining us. The big D, the big D.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. One question from Bob Dressler. Should I be telling my people to have the tankless water heaters set at 140?
That's I can't answer that question for you. I'm telling you, you probably won't until somebody says code-wise that we got to start doing this. So again, I'll leave it there, short and sweet. TACO can't tell you that, but
Right.
I can tell you as an industry, the trend is go in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, if you set it down real low, that's like I said, that's the perfect breeding grounds for
Yep.
Legionella, even in what would be considered instantaneous creation. You're not storing the water at that temperature, but it's still being created at that temperature.
Yeah, and again, as mentioned, we're worried about those legs of pipe that's out there. You got the supply portion of the system that's not going to be as hot as what's coming out of the water heater, regardless if it's a tank type or tankless. So
Right. And again, I want to make sure, Ben, we're not professing to be experts on Legionella or guiding you on Legionella control. We're
Nope.
just telling you what we have learned over the course of time. Always
Yes.
make sure you understand what's going on in your territories and make yourselves the experts on Legionella, because we most certainly aren't. We just understand that water temperatures have a lot to do with it. And the reason we brought up the Legionella discussion wasn't to educate you on Legionella. It was to say, the higher the water temperature that you store at and the higher the water temperature you got running it through a recirc system, that is a component, that's an ingredient,
Yep.
that's an ingredient for pipe failure in a domestic hot water recirculation. That's the part to focus on tonight, because we can get sidetracked on a discussion on Legionella, and none of us are experts on that.
No, but there's plenty of good reading materials out there that the industry has put out to kind of bring you, at least get you up to speed and let you feel a little more comfortable of why we're doing what we're doing. If you'll think back, I don't need to go all the way back, but there was the 4 contributing factors. Think back to those and give me a little feedback of which ones you as a mechanical contractor or plumber have control of.
All right.
I'll give you a hint. Do you have any control of the chlorines or chloramines or anything they put in the water? No. Okay, you see where I'm going with that. What
Right.
do you have control of? What if all of a sudden the code told you had to run 140 degrees? Would you have control of it?
No, you would not.
What if the mixing valve starts to creep up in temperature? That never happens, right?
Right.
So think of what you have control of, and that's what we're going to pinpoint tonight. We have control of the circulator sizing and whether it's going to run 24/7 or not. You know, as
Yep.
as plumbing contractors, as mechanical people, that's what we can control. So again, that's why I've laid it out that way. there's some things you can do and some things you won't have control of.
All right, we had a bunch of guys actually just say that exact same thing, Rick, that you just said. Renee, Rex, and Bill, and Bill and Joe all kind of chimed in at exactly the same moment. So great minds think
Indeed.
alike.
Hey, perfect. All
All
right.
right, take it away.
So,
Continue.
so the other part of this is, okay, if the pump has to move, fluid around in a circle, and that's really all we're doing. You hydronic people out there totally already have the concept down of what we're doing. If you're doing closed loop hydronics, then you're going to do the same thing with domestic hot water circulation for the most part. Okay, just knowing a couple little special things. So, how much flow does a circulator actually have to produce? That's a good question. That's a question most people can't answer because they haven't either sat through something like this, or they've learned other means of doing it, or they just rules of thumb. Just use this little tiny thing and let it run 24/7. Okay, so again, the little tiny pump. Well, I'll say it this way: in the world of domestic hot water recirculation, it's not how big your pump is that you want to get worried, to get excited about. Ooh, big pumps. The problem is they're almost always too big. Even the little ones, especially when you're using traditional sizing methods like having one little return pipe, little as in ½ inch, and though that we're going to show you a couple examples here. But anyway, so how much flow does the circulator actually have to produce? Good question, right? First thing that a lot of people learn when they feel they've got this down pat is they realize how to do a heat loss of the supply portion of the hot water lines, right? But if they do that, and we'll kind of show you a little bit of that. If we do that, that means that if we did a good job, the pump's going to run 24/7 to overcome the line losses, because we're not talking about seasonal things here. We're talking about the pipe running in the walls in a controlled environment, right? So generally speaking, the heat loss is going to be the same 24/7. I realize, if it's in a crawl space, etc., but you see where I'm going with that. If you only size your pump to take care of the heat losses of the supply portion of the system, your pump's got to run 24/7. That's what, that's why we're going to give you a couple little hints and a couple little tips and tricks that are going to help you just come up with a number in GPM in a safe, easy way. And we'll go through that. Make sure you got that down. So typically we want to flow more than the minimum, and we want to do it faster so we can meet the demand. And we just got to worry about this simple little thing called maximum velocity limitation, shortened here. Okay, now this is, some people think I'm talking about a specific control option here that's been known as on-demand style controls, or when required type controls. That's when you push a button. You folks that might be out west and somewhere around California have probably heard of Title 24. That they're almost mandating that at this point, where anything that's new, thou shalt have a button to tell the circulator to come on. And we're not going to get into that whole story tonight, but just understand that's not necessarily what I'm talking about here. All we're saying is, if the control strategy of whatever it is that turns the circulator on and turns it off tells it to come on, we want it to do its job relatively quickly and shut back off again. Remember my pet peeve, that fourth little contributing factor: don't let the pump sit there and spin. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So anyway, now the question is this important? Is getting the pipe sizing and the pump sizing important? Let's give you something to back that up. And of course, you betcha. John, any questions come in before I move on?
One actually just came in from Jim Tamlin. It's a great point. Pipe insulation plays a big part here.
Absolutely.
Everything Rick's going to talk about just screams, insulate the pipe, baby, insulate the pipe.
Of the 4-hour session, I've actually drawn up a water heater with and without insulation. Do you see what I'm saying there? Think about it this way, that the domestic hot water supply portion of the system and the corresponding dedicated return portion of the system become extensions of the water heater when you do the job correctly, right? So why would you ever not insulate the water heater? If you can imagine that, in my picture, I actually show it, you know, uninsulated, and I show a lot of side losses and, you know, top losses and just losses, right? Well, if in essence, when you run potable hot water piping out to a portion of the house or a portion of the building, and you're not mandated to insulate it, you might as well take the jacket off that water heater. Okay, so that it does mean a lot. So thanks for bringing that point up. Okay,
Yeah, he says,
again,
he asked, have you ever been to Alabama? I'm guessing they don't insulate pipes down in Bama. I'm
it's
guessing
not
that,
just there. I've had
yeah,
this
it doesn't matter. Yeah, and unless someone says you're not getting a permit to live in this house unless those pipes are insulated, they probably don't get insulated. That's just the real world at play.
It is real world, no doubt about it. So, good stuff, guys. Keep that
Doesn't
coming
mean
in.
it's not a good idea. Doesn't mean you shouldn't, but yeah.
Just because they don't force you, right? Hey, we're not going to read this word for word, but just let's point out, give credit where it's due. Copper Development Association. We actually use this handbook for all kinds of things, don't we, John? But if somebody will take the time, page 11 of this particular copper tube handbook on this publication. Actually, this is one tall column, basically. I just broke it up and made it big enough to highlight a couple things. Again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to read this. I want you to read it, right? But 140 kind of shows its head there, okay? Remember when I said I showed you 2 feet per second, and then in parentheses, I showed 3? Okay, that's where this comes from. They give you a little sliding rule there, right? If you're like me and you want to be conservative from the standpoint of velocities, I'm going to size everything at 2 feet per second. I'll show you. We're going to get into that. Don't worry about it at this point in time. But I know I have an ace up my sleeve in a copper situation. If I needed to on an existing system, and I needed to elevate that just a little bit, run that water a little bit faster, I have in writing from the Copper Development Association that I can go to 3 feet per second. Now it changes when we go to other products, so just heads up on that. Remember what I said about the products that are added into the water from the municipal level, right? That we don't have any control on that typically. I think that's what they're talking about here when it says locally aggressive water. I'm reasonably sure they're not talking about you know, sand and particulate and things like that. They're talking about the things that are added into the system that can cause it to be more erosive or corrosive, as it's stating, as I've highlighted there. The other thing I want to talk about and point out again, that this is primarily pointing at the closed loop and dedicated return portions of a potable water system, not a heating system or a cooling system. You know what I'm saying? You can see how this is kind of slided that way based on this last paragraph here, right? When we get down and talking about this is concerning for both the supply and the return portions of the system. What they mean there is that they're concerned about this on both sides of the system, but where it's mostly problematic is on the return portion of the potable water side of the system, hence the sprinkler systems that we were talking about, right? And speaking of that, I know, I should say, I'm reasonably sure the reason this type of document exists is because they're worried about potential lawsuit or something like that. If I've been in a building 3 or 4 years and all of a sudden I get, you know, holes in it, and I get a sprinkler system that's unbeknownst to them, right? Then somebody's going to point the finger at the pipe that's leaking, like they have with plastic, right? So they're going to say, no, we know what this is from, and here's why. And they're going to point at the circulator, and they're going to point at the design of the control strategy, and they're going to point to the person that put that on a document in one way or another, either it was specified by an engineer of record, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the finger's going to be pointed away from the manufacturer, and that's what we're seeing in this industry quite a bit. There's some talk about that even from the plastic piping folks as well. They've taken care of a lot of systems out there that might be ending fairly soon, especially when it's really not a manufacturer's defect. So let's wrap this up down here at this last section. It just says care should be taken to ensure the circulating pump is not oversized and that the return piping is not undersized. Both are common occurrences in installed piping system. You know, that wraps it up, right? That says, hey, those are the things we're worried about. And that's kind of what, that's their get out of jail free card. And we as professionals in this industry have to understand why they're putting this sort of thing in writing. Okay, let's put a number to that 2 to 3 feet per second. Here's a velocity table that you folks have a copy of, right? It might even be newer than this. These are all works in progress, and I change them as somebody gives me hints and tips and that sort of thing. But I made this up to teach that class that, you know, we started doing about 2 years ago, 2.5, 3 years actually now. So what I did is I added the 2 foot in there and 3 foot. I had just a 3 foot to start with, but I'm saying, you know what? It says 2 to 3. I'm going to give you the ability to choose if you want to be conservative or if you want to push the envelope a bit. So let's say, for instance, you had a 3/4 inch dedicated return line, and it was type M copper or type L copper, whichever you commercial guys, right? So if that was the case, I'm telling you, you better keep it around 3 gallons a minute. Okay, that size the system to deliver 3 gallons a minute in one way or another. And we'll get into maybe a little bit of that when we get done with the main session and people start asking questions about control strategies and stuff. That's when it really opens up. So again, this is just to let you know you have a copy of this as part of your handouts, and this is how I want you to interpret this. I want you to focus mostly on the recirculation portion. I've thrown, just for gratis in there, I've thrown you know, what it means to the hot water supply portion of the system, and they don't have a problem going out to 5 feet per second, and the cold has no problem going out to 8 feet per second. This is just not TACO information. This is just information you can get from any of the manufacturers that make copper pipe. Okay, this is the general rules. Okay, I've kind of focused in on this portion of the lookup table so that you can be careful and you have better understanding how to keep yourself out of trouble. Okay.
Got a lot of good comments coming in here, Rick. One, Gustavo Solano. And Gustavo, I'd like you to tell me where you're from. But he points out the energy code usually requires insulation throughout once a recirculating system is implemented, which is, as you said, that's an extension of the water heater. So we're
Exactly.
you know, Gustavo says that is required. So Gustavo, let's know where you're from. Arthur Brown caught me saying something stupid yet again, because one of the things I'm really good at. Arthur, you caught me. He says, what are you trying to do? Start Civil War II? We in Huntsville insulate everything, and the inspection office will eat you alive if you don't. So yeah, it's outstanding. And actually, I just responded to him. He says, that's funny, because my experience when I was a contractor up here in the north was inspectors couldn't care less.
Yeah.
My experience. I'm not saying none of them care. Just in my experience, that they wouldn't even really. We had a rule in the code book that if it was more than 50 feet to the farthest fixture, you did have to install recirculation, but it was never enforced. And I don't know if it's enforced to this day. If anybody locally here in the Northeast knows, chime on in. Okay, well, please do.
Hopefully we're going to get that fixed. So.
Yeah, there you go. There was one more, there were a couple more questions actually. One was about with high velocity, is there more possibility to have problems with pipe by hardness? And I'm presuming that was from Ernesto. If there was, if he was talking about type M or type L, and I think you just addressed that with this particular chart.
It's wall thickness, not hardness. Okay, I might have misunderstood what you said, John.
Yeah, I think I'm Ernesto. Let me know if that's what you meant by type L or type M copper. If that's what your question was about. And then Jim Tamblin says again, 140 is problematic with the code ceiling of 120 for faucets and showers. How is that resolved? Again, that's going to be a tempering or mixing valve issue. You have a mixing valve at the tank or at the point of use.
Point of use.
Yeah, at that point it would definitely be point of use.
Yeah, we're going to say that the water behind the wall is 140. If it's 140, then your little your ASSE 1070 mixing valve will have to be used at that point of use.
So. Right. And then Dwight Eisenhower chimes in, I've seen whole developments with recirc lines and no insulation on the hot water piping.
Yep, we've seen it. That's one of the reasons we're talking about it.
There you go. All righty. Take her away.
Okay, all this was doing, folks, is putting a number. Remember, I'm talking about velocities at 2 to 3 feet. Well, that's different for every pipe. So all we're doing is putting a number to it. Okay. Again, that's part of your class handouts up here. So let's go ahead
I
and
got
talk.
one more question for you, and I think why 2 feet per second limit on the recirc line only?
Yes, and I'm going to clarify that.
Okay, very good.
So hang tough just 1 second.
Sorry,
But
man.
yeah, no, that's perfect. Recirc line portion. That's why I'm pointing at this right here. Recirc portion. I even changed the wording on it so that people would not get confused. So anyway, we're trying to make it simple, right? So again, we were just talking about the copper folks. Let's talk about what the PEX people, or the people, and I'll say it this way, generally speaking, most of the folks that belong to the Plastic Piping Institute will kind of go along with this lines. I did a bunch of research before I put this together 2 or 3 years ago, and just said, I just want to make sure. Now, some of you know that I used to work for a PEX manufacturer, and so did John and Dave, and we, it's not that we got it all figured out, and I probably forgot a whole bunch of stuff. I know that for a fact, but I went back to some of these folks that I still know that are in the industry and tried to get a consensus of what has to happen here, and what are they wanting people to understand. So I just pulled some writing out of one of the major PEX manufacturers here. This is right out of one of their plumbing design books. And so let's break it down a little bit. First thing I'm going to say, you know what? In a cold water portion of the system, they have no problem with you doing 10 feet per second, right? I mean, it's recommended. It says recommended right there, recommended. Okay. They have no problem with you doing the hot water supply portion of the system. That means the pipes that bring the water to the fixture, they don't have a problem with it going to 8 feet per second. And look at this. Look at the temperature. Maximum operating temperature, 200 degrees. Okay, so I hope you're understanding why I'm emphasizing this, right? Okay, look at this. I circled it for you. Now they're talking about the domestic hot water return piping. I like to refer to it as the dedicated return portion. Look, we have a portion here that's called cold water that they've designated. Okay, they got a portion here called the hot water piping. They've designated that, and then they specifically call out a portion of the system here, and thou shalt not exceed 2 feet per second in that portion of the system. Okay, you start going back to the PEX manufacturers, asking them to come look at a potential defective system. You better know what part of the system is at hand, right? Where the problem lies. Here's that 140 degrees again, right? So again, what they've done in this particular instance, and others are probably similar online, is you're just saying they're taking the recommendations out of ASPE's Engineering Design Handbook, Volume 2, Plumbing Systems. Within that, it talks about, hey, maybe those portions of the system should have lower velocities, okay? So now let's put a number, a GPM number to that 2 feet per second. And your handout, again, your handout will show you a portion of the system that says SDR9 PEX. That's your standard dimension ratio 9, and that's what typically all of your ASTM product is SDR9. So I've taken it all the way up here to 3-inch and just shown you what 2 feet per second means. You folks that have been running 1/2-inch PEX lines back, you better keep them at 1 gallon a minute. You see what, you see where this is going, right? You see why that is, okay? If you've been running 3.6 or 5.7, and with the pump sizing that we see out there and people not knowing what they're doing, this is easily done, okay? On shorter runs anyway. So, John, anything coming in?
No, again, I think Chet had asked why 2 feet per second limit on recirc only. That's the part where we have forced circulation. It's not just I have the faucet and the water's running through the pipe while the faucet is on.
That's short term.
That's short term. We're talking about long term flow that's forced by a circulator through 1/2-inch pipe. To recirculate, and that the limit of 2 feet per second on that 1/2-inch pipe, or 1.1 gallons per minute, is only focused on that part of the system, that part of the return piping. So that's why we're concerned about that. If you just open up a faucet, well, you're not recirculating anything. That's what the pipe is made to do. It's
Pressure differential. Yep.
yeah, it's pressure differential, and it's momentary use. When you have a pump and it's running, that's different. You know, that's different.
That's
So
good.
I hope that answers your question, Chet.
Yeah. Cool.
And then Jim says a whole house instantaneous may not stay on at 1.1 gallon a minute. Very, very good point. And that's not what we're trying to do. Yeah, there you go.
Size your pipes. You know, again, this is just a small segment out of a 4-hour course. One of the things I talk about is I take it back to something that we were teaching 20 years ago, folks, and that's understanding this thing called a full-size loop. Okay, and I don't have time to get into it tonight, but that's a perfect application of a full-size loop. Is turn that pump on, whip that water around, shut it right back off again, and strategically have the hot water main so close to the fixture that all we got to worry about is a short little 5-foot riser or maybe a 10-foot drop. Guess what? You'll have water in probably 2 or 3 seconds in a properly designed system, and you won't waste any water and you won't be running it all the time. So again, we could just go on and on. I hope maybe during the chat section, we'll get into some more detail.
Very good.
What does TACO always tell you to do? The math. Yes. Yes, do the math. So that's what part of the section we're on right now. Again, I have also included, we're not going to do this tonight because we've done this before. Some of you have already seen this domestic hot water recirc worksheet. This is kind of how I started on this, 3 or 4 years ago, saying if I'm going to teach a class, let's give them something to write down, right? I like to have a form or a chart. It just keeps me straight. And eventually we can turn it into a spreadsheet. And what we've done is actually taken that spreadsheet and actually built an app, which is where we're going next. But I'm just going to tell you, this is part of your handout. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you can get some of the data just on lookup web searches on pressure drop information. You get that from your PEX manufacturer. Your Copper Development Association gives you that as well. And there's some additional handouts if somebody can't find that stuff, because that's third-party stuff. We might be able to come up with something for you too. But this is a handy little sheet that I would encourage you to use prior to just jumping into the app that I'm about to show you. Okay, I know that might be cheating a little bit, but I'm saying no, learn the fundamental, the foundational things first, and then start with the calculator. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So that's one of your handouts as well. And this is a handout. You guys, if you've printed it already, that's fine. No big deal. I'm just showing you that, kind of keep an idea of this tank style. We're going to do one of these as a design on our app. And then I did another one because a lot of the West, I'm out West mostly, and a lot of the West is tankless, right? So I just kind of fixed this up to show it with a tankless style water heater. And we'll do that. That's a little bit different in its lengths and sizes and stuff. So we'll do a couple of examples for you and get you comfortable with understanding why we ask some of the questions, etc. That worksheet will really do it for you. But we wanted to spend some time with the app this evening. So before I completely switch gears, let's show you what we call this. We call this the Size Right Circulator Sizing Tool. Okay, DHWR Size Right. Notice right up here. This is just a cut and paste of the web page. I'm gonna take you to the web page, and we'll go in and work it live. Hopefully everything's working from the standpoint of sometimes when I'm presenting, you can't see my drop downs. We'll hope tonight and knock on my oak desk that it all works out for you. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm gonna actually walk you through how to get there to start with. Okay, the best thing to do is just go to TACO Comfort, their little icon or their website, tacocomfort.com, and you look up here, right here. I'm just used to it, right? You look around. What are these little tabs for? Look, it says Selection Tools, so that should give you a hint right there. We click on that, and we go right over here where it has a nice list of all the things that TACO has tools to help you with, and right here jumps the domestic hot water recirc Size Right circulator sizing, and that same page that I had before will actually come up, and now it's actually a real live page here. Excuse me. Now, when you first open it up, folks, you're going to get this description, and I encourage you just to read through it. It's not that lengthy. It just kind of gives you an idea of why we're doing what we're doing. For the sake of time, I'll save that for you to read, and you can hide it later if you don't want to read it every time, just by simply doing something like that. I'll point out what the start over button is too. Start over button is a kind of maybe a simpler way of going up here and just refreshing. Remember that's your reload current page. Some people call it refresh. That's kind of what this does. As with a lot of apps and spreadsheets and stuff, sometimes if you throw it a couple weird curveballs, again, we try to work out all these kinks and these little issues and stuff, but until we get everything fixed, just remember, it's real easy. Just go up here and start over and put your information in. I'm going to go pretty slow, but somebody who's familiar with this app, you could put information in this app, just lickety split. We're literally talking seconds to fill out a form. So this is not hard, okay? So I'm going to pull out the first one here, and rather than go down and identify everything and then go back and put it in, I'm going to identify it as I'm doing it. And the first one I'm going to start working on is this little printout that I gave you. And again, you don't have to print it out. Don't worry, just watch and learn. We call it show and tell. I'm showing and telling you about something, so just listen, you know. Remember when you were a little kid in kindergarten, they did, this is show and tell, and the people sitting down didn't have to do anything but listen, right? So is there an existing or will there be a domestic hot water recirc line installed? Now, we're asking that for good reason. Why? Does every house have domestic hot water recirc already plumbed in like it should? Of course not, right? So we want you to answer that. Now, remember, as most apps are, once you start populating things, right, it's going to make some changes down here based on the landscape changing. You're changing the landscape by answering questions, okay? In this case, in the one that we're going to do today, and let me tell you, this example, I'll tell you right now, is an existing system, okay? It's nothing that we would design nowadays knowing what we know, but you folks, we understand, are going to have to deal with existing systems. You're not going to get to repipe everything. So let's go ahead and click yes, okay? So in the background, that's making some changes, right? Yeah, some of you might have caught that. There was a couple little details that were changed right with the click of a button. So the next one, it says, what kind of water heater type do you have? Well, if you have a recirculation line installed, then this drop down is going to look like this. Your choices are, you've got a tank style. Now this could be a indirect fired off a boiler. This could be you know, a electric water heater. This could be a gas fired water heater. This could be, you know, anything that has a tank on it, you know, so understand what that means. Or my other choice is a tankless water heater. Most of you know what those are. And we did this specifically for the Northeast. And I know the folks that come to this class are generally speaking from the Northeast, and you guys still have some oil fired equipment. You still have some tankless coils that are inside the boiler, not maybe even some old Taco heaters, sidearm. But generally speaking, this is the tankless coil that's inside the boiler. Again, that's what it potentially could be. And so we wanted to give you that choice. But what are we doing tonight on this is we're doing a tank style. Okay, now pipe layout. Well, let's look at what our drop downs are when you select tank type. Well, we can have a traditional trunk and branch recirculation, or we can have that full-size loop that I was talking about. This particular job that we're looking at is somewhat of a traditional trunk and branch, so I'm going to click on that one. If you want to know what it means, we've actually populated a little sample pipe layout here for you if you just want to go in and take a peek, right? So you can see either a tankless style or a tank style coming out. We've got hot water coming out of a mixing valve, coming out and going out to the fixtures, and you know, traditionally reducing in size as it goes out and it drops the amount of water or fixture units. Then from that last fixture, in this case it looks like a kitchen sink, I've pulled back a dedicated return line, okay, and it comes back in the little orange looking pipe, and it has a circulator on it, and it has a control of some sort on it, okay. So hopefully that helps. But just remember, you've got that ability to do that. Take a look at any of the piping, okay? And then, of course, we have the supply material and the return material. Your drop downs look like We got type M, type L, we got copper tube size, CPVC, and we got PEX or PERT in an SDR9 fashion, okay? So default is copper type M, typically for this. Remember, this app is a residentially focused app. It only goes up to 1-inch pipe. We're currently in the process of releasing a light commercial version that'll probably go up to 3 or 4 inch. So just heads up on that. If you haven't heard that already, that's what we're going to do. So now you might say, well, why do you have 2 different pipes? Well, we caught this right off the bat. There's plenty of systems out there that were originally plumbed in copper, but have a return pipe that was put in later that was PEX. So you could go in there and choose that, right? So anyway, that's why there's a separate return material there. So everybody good so far? I know I'm rambling on. Are you engaged?
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay. All right, John, keep them awake for me.
Well, good.
I tend to kill them. All right. So show details. This is something that one of the people that initially was asking for some of the way this was designed really was giving us information saying that some of his people don't care about the details. So we leave that unchecked, but I'm kind of a detail guy, so I want to see the details. So you just remember, if you want to see the results of things, go ahead and check this thing. So let's go ahead and put in some pipe. You guys call it out to me. Some of it I have memorized, but how much, starting at the water heater, how much 1-inch pipe? Let's start there at the water heater and give me that sum tally of the 1-inch pipe.
Now you got me. I don't have the drawing in front of me.
Okay, fine. It's 50 foot. Okay, so I'm going to put in 50 foot, and I'm going to hit tab. The people that are used to working with spreadsheets and apps like this that are on a desktop, the tab button is like enter. If you insist on hitting enter, we've got them to fix that too. So you can use enter or tab, but if you want to do it faster, just use your tab button. So I'm going to now, I've got the 1-inch entered, right? It's even starting to populate some information for you. Let's go ahead and enter the 3/4 pipe, okay? And I hit tab, it takes me over here to the input. And if I add that up, that's 40, 50, 60, 70 foot of 3/4 inch pipe, okay? So I hit tab, that enters that. Again, it starts populating over here. Notice nothing's happening here yet because we haven't given it the magic information it needs to tally that. So there is one small piece on the supply portion of the system. Notice there's a little 10-foot leg for that last fixture. So I'm going to go ahead and hit plus, and I'm going to go 1/2 inch, and I'm going to just put 10 and hit tab. So now I have the supply portion of the system. Notice it's separated from the return and should be, okay? Supply portion of the system has 50 foot of 1-inch, 70 foot of 3/4, and 10 foot of 1/2 inch pipe, okay? All we've done here is we've kind of shown you how much gallon is in that, just based on the information that comes from the piping manufacturers, okay? So notice on the drawing that you have a dedicated return line coming from that last fixture group, and it comes all the way back around. And guess what? It's the total of the sum of these right here, so that's 130. Remember, this is an existing system where people thought 1/2 inch was sufficient. So I'm going to put 130 in there, and I'm going to hit tab, okay? Now, look over here. I've given it what it needs. What does it need? It needs to know what the maximum velocity limitation is for that particular product. What are we talking about? What product? Well, you told us that you had a material on the return side here that is copper type M. So we just go to the lookup table and say, hey, 1.6 GPM is the maximum velocity you want to run in a 1/2 inch piece of type M copper. So we did all the hard part. We took that away. You already have your GPM number, which is half of what you need to size a pump. Okay, we got you halfway there in a couple clicks. Okay, are we good? Anything coming in, Johnny?
Oh, just one question that you're going to get to, I think, in just a moment about the difference in fittings between like an F1960 and a crimp PEX. But I think
I love
I've
that.
got a hunch you're going to get to that in about 7 seconds.
I'm going to get into it. Yes. Okay, good question. No, thanks. Keep them coming. Right now, without changing anything, right out of the box, we need a pump that's 1.6 at 9.59 feet ahead. Where did that 9.59 come from? Let's go ahead and talk about it. And we have some flexibility here. We had 1.15 here on the supply portion of the system. Notice that's normally where we don't have problems because the velocities are not as high on the supply portion of the system like they are typically at the choke point. What's the choke point of these systems? And John alluded to it earlier. Domestic hot water portion specifically is where everything gets choked down and everything's rammed through there. So notice the majority of the head number, the calculation is down here on the return side. I had a 130 foot, a half-inch pipe coming back from the farthest fixture. That's where the majority is coming from. So if I take this and add it up to this and I add it up, notice I've done some things down here. So this 6.85 is the sum of these two numbers, right? And now I'm going to answer that question that's actually talked about down here in the fine print. Always, if somebody like TACO or anybody else gives you a disclaimer, take the time to read it. I'm just going to paraphrase it for you, right? We're going to start at the velocity of 2 feet per second on this particular application, right? We're just going to keep you safe that way. If for some reason you want to exceed that, yes, we'll allow you to do that. But you won't be coming back to TACO saying, oh, you guys told me to do this. And we'll say, no, we don't. The default is this. You must have overrode it. Okay. So just covering us from a liability standpoint. So read the fine print. And also what we're saying in here is we've got some numbers that we've thrown in there for valve and fitting factors. You folks have sat through any of our classes. We always talk about kind of the easy route is just to throw a number at it. And again, you got to understand there's nothing scientific about valve and fitting factors. They're complete wags. Okay, and you guys know, fill in the blank on what a wag is, right? So a better way to do it is to actually use equivalencies, and that's even questionable nowadays. And some of that information about equivalencies based on 90s being, 5 foot of pipe and, T's on the side being 7 or 10 foot of pipe, that information is almost or right at 100 years old or older. Okay, so that's actually going through and being looked at by some people that wear the white lab coats and stuff, and not TACO, but other people that care more about those specifically as it relates to plumbing. So I think that is they're doing a really good job, and they're up to about 1 inch, and they've got that stuff covered. Realistically, it's going to come to this. If you have this fitting, you're going to deduct X amount of percentage of PSI. And then you just add your fittings up, and they've got this stuff nailed. Because remember, they do the calculation, then they test it, and then they know it works. So anyway, that's where this whole industry is going. Once we have that data, and that data has all been accounted for, we can put something like that in here in an app like this. So keep in mind, this is a work in progress. So right now, 1.6 at 9.6 feet ahead. Okay. So the valve and fitting factor, I personally know that's a bit high. What we did is we said we're going to add 40% for any of the fittings that go over the pipe, and we're going to use 60%, 1.6, for anything that goes inside the pipe. A cold expansion or anything other than that. We're not going to differentiate. You hear one argument here, one argument there. You guys go to those manufacturers and take their word for it. What we're doing here, see how I've highlighted this? This is flexible. You can put anything in there you want. Okay. So put anything in there. I know in these designs that I've run a number of them that I'm going to use 25%. So notice that changed that number a bit. Now I'm down to 8.5 feet ahead. But I'm not done yet. Okay. Is there a mixing valve? Well, if you look at my drawing, do I show a mixing valve there? Yes. I don't show the 12-inch drop down like it's supposed to have. And a lot of people would argue that nowadays with the integral flow checks that are in them and thermal siphoning and all that stuff. But, if it's drawn or if there's a note to say to drop that valve down 12, 18 inches, go ahead and do it. You guys know how to run pipe. So is there a mixing valve? Yes. And then it gives me a place to put in the CV of that valve. Okay. The valve that I know that was part of this original design is a 1.8, and that's why I defaulted. But you could put any number in there you want. If you know your particular valve that you're using is 2.3 or a 3.9 or whatever it is, you put whatever it is. But the beauty of it is we've done the calculation for you. There's the additional pressure drop at 1.6 gallons a minute through a CV, a valve with a CV rating of 1.8. So we do that nice little calculation for you already, saved you from that. So basically I need 1.6 at 10.4. Now let's watch the magic happen when I push the green button. Now first off, I'm going to get the high efficiency circulators, and then I'm going to get the standard efficiency circulators. Now let's just, since I know I want a control strategy that's sound, I'm going to use the smallest high efficiency pump I can get in here that makes sense. And I'm just going to click on that one right there. That happens to be our Smart Plus E. Okay. Now I'll show you a couple things. You can see a little tab right here. It kind of shows you the operating performance curve, and the operating point. I can click on that and blow it up, but I want to show it all to you at one time for the sake of time. Okay. What I want to do is I want to say, I'll show you a couple things. We can go and look at the catalog cut sheets by clicking here, the instruction sheet or the submittal data. It brings that right up for you. But don't do this yet, because actually I can make that submittal data specific to your particular job. Okay. Or I can just go right to the website and look at this page. Okay. So let's go ahead and go in and show you what's really cool about this, right? I can go in and put a tagline on it, the domestic hot water circulator -1. That's the tag off of the prints if it's a commercial job, or whatever you want to call it if you're just doing non-commercial work. We actually tell you what the full actual part number is. Remember, with TACO, we have a lot of model numbers, and then we have a corresponding part number. Those part numbers have something to do with the head and flow. Okay, we actually had this part number nailed down a little early. This pump is actually a 1311. But it's close enough to 1212, and that's what this actual part number has to do with. Then I go in and put some job information on the Alpha building. Mr. ABC engineers are doing that job. D-Best Plumbing's doing it, and I know there's a bunch of those out there, right? And there's our reps. We've got Emerson there, and I just put best rep, XYZ reps. You can put the rep in there. This is primarily so the rep can put their name on the product if they're doing it for a contractor. If you're a contractor, you put anything in there you want, right? And then I'll click right here on create the PDF, okay? And so we're going to actually populate this submittal data sheet for you. That's why I'm saying wait and show this once you put all the good information in there, because now it's got everything you need there. It's got all the dimensions like it normally would, electrical information, all that good stuff. Talks about a little bit about the control, okay? But here is a digital copy, a PDF copy of the worksheet. And it's all done for you with the model number and the flow and head and pipe configuration and all the pertinent information on the supply portion, and as well as the return portion of the system. And it tallies everything up for you here as well. So very cool, very handy. I tell you, this is what you want to pull out when somebody questions what you did on the design. Say, here it is. It's in black and white. If it's on paper, it did happen. Okay. And then, of course, last but not least, there, and you can rotate this when you need to after you print it or whatever. And there's our operating point, right? We got the operating point right there. There's the 1.6 at just 10.6 or whatever it ended up being. So we just showed that falls well within the capacity of that particular pump. So cool or what?
Yeah. And what's cool with that, if you go back to that real quick, Rick, it put the operating point on that plot, and with the 006E3 circulator, that's a circulator that has a dial on it that's like a volume dial, and right there it's saying, hey, and Dave's showing it to you right there, just set that dial to just a skosh above the high setting, and you're good. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you'll be close. Yeah, I mean that is very good, very good.
Hey, Rick, I want to ask you a question. Now that 1.6 gallons per minute, that's a limit. That's not a target, right? We don't need
that's a target. That gives us a number to use that will move the water as quickly as possible. Remember, that's what we want to accomplish, but we don't want to exceed the velocity limitation, which the manufacturer gave us. And we're even being conservative on this case because we're using 2 feet under copper conditions.
No, so think about it.
Yeah,
Go ahead. No, think about it this way. if we have now this is where how you control the whole, there's my boy here, how you control the DHW pump is going to come into play. If you're on a timer or a smart plug or something, getting the water there fast, is nice, but you might be able to bump that number down to 1 gallon a minute and maybe get to an even smaller pump.
Yeah, so what John's getting at right here, remember I said you can override anything. See how I just swept that? I can put 1.0 in there.
And exactly if your head loss is getting too high.
Yeah, you could play with it. Notice I got my head down a little bit by knowing a little more about what my valve and fitting factor is, Of course, when Taco put this together, we have to be conservative. So realize if we allow you to change something, we've given you the flexibility to do that. So anyway, so
yeah, here you see going down to 1 gallon a minute. You're down. You've cut the head in by more than half, or just about half.
Exactly. Yeah, remember it cubes. So folks, I hope you like that. Let's real quick show you how fast this is. Let's go do another one. Okay, let's do that one that's tankless. Okay, so let's start over again. Is there a dedicated return line? In this case, they did it right and they ran the tankless. Now, keep in mind, we won't eat up that much time, but you can also do under tankless applications, you can do one with no recirc and put one of our little genie pumps out at the farthest fixture and pump through it that way. That's set up to work inside this app as well. But for tonight, we're going to stay with the way it should have been done with a dedicated return line, and go ahead and choose this. We're going to go tankless. I'm going to go fast just so you can see how quick it could potentially be. Trunk and branch, yeah, we're going to stay with copper. I'm going to show the details. In this particular, I don't have this one as memorized, so I didn't have 1 inch, so let's start with 3/4 inch on the supply side. Coming out of the heater, I've got 20 foot, there's 30 foot, and there's 40 foot. Give me the math on that, guys. Who can add that up? That's 90, right? I have 90 foot of 3/4, and then I have some 1/2 inch pipe, and I've got 20, 30, 40 foot of 1/2 inch pipe. Now that's the supply portion. And again, now I have 130 foot, these two numbers added together. It's not always like that, but we just do that for seminar land to keep the numbers nice and simple for you. We'll put 130 in there, and we'll start tallying that up, right? It starts adding it all up for us. The one thing I wanted to show you, we're still at a decent size here, but let's change some things. Let's go ahead and manipulate this. I'm going to go back to 25 there just because I feel comfortable with that. You have the flexibility to do whatever you feel comfortable with, right? Now, is there a mixing valve present? Typically not on a tankless, right? So again, nothing populates here, right? But notice what we gave you here. What is the additional head we have to concern ourselves with on a tankless unit? It's the heat exchanger or the boiler coil, right? So in this case, what we'll go up here and we'll say, okay, at that really low flow, remember, we only need 1.6 to do the job. Now I'm waiting for a question to pop up, and I know it's going to happen. So that's why I'm going this direction. I'm going to say at that real low flow rate, I'm only about 2 foot ahead or just under 1 PSI. Okay, so let's say I'm at 1 PSI drop. I'm going to reach up here. The 0.87 is real close to 1. It actually it translates to 2 feet ahead. So now I need a circulator that will do 1.6 at 12.28. So tally down here, it's always brought back over here for you. Okay, so just understand, I wanted you to see how this populates when you choose a tankless style heater. Okay, so you've got to be able to put, or if you were to do an old sidearm or a tankless coil or something like that. That's how we're going to add the additional pressure drop at that given. Now, don't get confused with you say, no, the pressure drop's a lot higher than that. Yeah, when you're trying to run 4 gallons a minute through it, or 2 gallons a minute, 3 gallons a minute, 4 something, right? They're 10 foot ahead right there at 4.3. Okay, so I get that, but that's not what we're doing. The circulator is only going to be pushing 1.6 through there. So I hope everybody gets that, right?
Or less.
Right.
Or
the
less.
biggest thing is, the biggest thing is that you got to have at least a half a gallon a minute for most of your water heaters so they can trigger and fire. So as long as you're above that half gallon a minute, that thing is going to turn on. That's the important part. Yes.
And we're 3 times that. So typical. And again, you got to get this information from your particular manufacturer, but same thing applies here. Just hit the search thing. It's going to bring up the high efficiency first. It's going to bring up the standard efficiency later, et cetera, et cetera. We actually, again, I told you this is a work in progress. I've actually started looking at some of the development stuff. We have a version that's development, and we try to work out all the bugs on that before we present it to you. And that's got some even cooler things coming. Some more things are going to populate. It's going to kind of narrow it down a little bit, not give you maybe as many choices, and some more of some others. But folks, I've been talking a long time, so it's time for me to shut up and have Dave and John fill in the blanks.
That's some pretty amazing stuff there, Rick. That's really great work. And again, it shows you how important sizing, the proper sizing of these things are. It's really easy to oversize the circulator.
No doubt.
And it's really easy to put a knucklehead control strategy on here too. The key is, sizing appropriately and then controlling it intelligently.
Yeah, good.
Because 1.6 gallons per minute of continuous use is about the max you want to go. Once we start interrupting that and only running it, again, with the smart plug, 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, we start to take away that continuously flowing hot water. Because as Rick said earlier, the kryptonite for any pipe, doesn't matter what the material is, any pipe, the kryptonite for any pipe is hot, chlorinated water running continuously at high velocities. That'll eat up anything. Our goal is to avoid that. We do want to recirc this water. And remember that 1.6 GPM, again, it's not necessarily a target. It's a limit. You can, you might behoove you to design lower than that, but staying above your minimum and making sure, as Rick said, that you have the ability to overcome the line loss. But once you find that sweet spot of where you want to design, then controlling it becomes the second half of the equation. So a lot of great questions just came in. Dave, I'm going to leave those to you because I got to go do something. I promised last week I was going to do this.
No details.
Because I've been challenged. We were one of the, when we go on for hours here, we got all this crazy stuff coming up. And we started talking about food, and I said, hey, anything with peanut butter, man, I'm your guy. I love peanut butter. And someone has been after me, I forget who it was, has been after me for 5 weeks to actually go and eat a peanut butter and blue cheese sandwich, grilled peanut butter and blue cheese sandwich.
Can you believe that?
So I'm going to go make one right now, and I'm going to be right back. You guys have the con. You're in charge. I'm going to go make it and come back here, and I'm going to share it. Hey, I know it sounds gross. It sounds nasty, but I did look it up online. Apparently, it's a thing. It's a thing, and we're going to try it right now. I'll be back.
We'll find out. Yes.
It's a thing.
All right. So, Rickster, there was a question that came in earlier regarding your velocity charts with various materials handouts. Can you explain again what the system, what of the system is the recirc portion, and what part is the warm less than 140? So
okay, so you want to bring that chart up, Dave, or you want me to go? I can go back and I can just answer the question, right?
Okay.
On that handout I gave you, you'll see the column on the far left tells you what type of pipe you're dealing with. The next column talks about the recirc portion. There's I've titled the column, it says recirc portion. And then the next one is the hot supply, and the next one is cold supply. So it's always that first. In fact, what I might do, because there is confusion, and we don't really, I just did that because I was populating the whole thing when I made the sheet, is I might even get rid of the hot and the cold and just talk about the recirc. That might be better. But I, again, it's a quick reference is all it is. It's, that's what we want it to be. So.
And the definition of the recirc portion is from the last fixture that you're tapped into. Imagine, most of the time, if you didn't have a recirc portion in there, it would just dead end right there and go to that fixture.
Right.
And you have an elbow there. Now instead we put a T in and continue on and return back. So from that T all the way back to the water heater is going to be the recirc portion. The warm, that is the supply pipe to the fixture, and then the cold is the cold water supply. That's the length of it. So we're not using the cold here, in this application. So that's why we're not looking at those numbers. And basically it's a velocity. So really all we need, like Rick said, is to pay attention to the recirc portion, just to see what is our max flow and max velocity of the system.
Yeah, Dave, I had mentioned that the recirc portion of the system becomes the choke point. Whatever that means to you, it works for me, right? So call it whatever you want, but that's where, everything's coming out. And remember, we're talking about the pump when the pump is running, not when you're using domestic hot water. So everything's nice and big sizes because we supply. Our codes make us oversize our pipes, if you knew that or not. I think most of you do. But so we've got these nice big pipes coming up, and all of a sudden somebody was taught, just take a piece of 1/2-inch pipe and bring all that back. Well, that becomes a choke point right there when all that comes down, even though part of that supply still had 1/2 inch in it. Under normal usage, we're not talking about the same thing. We're talking about what the circulator has the ability to do treat it like a closed loop system at that point in time. We're just looping from that last fixture on out and back. And so the return portion of the system is where the velocity tends to get the highest. So hopefully that straightens that out, Dave.
Yep, I think it does. Joe Matlock asks about the commercial version. Will it address multiple circulating system with multiple recirc branch sizes? Let's say in a high-rise or a high-rise school, large high school, don't want to limit obviously to 1.6, and that's correct. Yeah, the 1.6 is based upon that small pipe. Exactly. But he's looking at 2 to 3 inch. So yes, I think that's going to be the maximum. It's going to be a light commercial, maximum pipe size of up to 3 inch that we'll be able to use the app with.
Because I have my hands in this, it's going to start by just letting you do one circuit with a dedicated return line. Then we'll morph that into the ability of saying copy and paste, because I think what he's alluding to, and sometimes like in apartment buildings, we might have risers, right? We might have 5, 7, 9 risers. So what we'll be able to do is, just figure out what the worst case one, work that one as far as one that's going to give you the highest pressure drop. Then it becomes a paralleled riser system, right? So we only have to worry about the worst case, but then we can stack them up side by side, bring it all back in a common return. Now the focal point will be the size of that common return, and we'll keep that down at 2 feet per second. Right. And of course, we'll give you the ability to make the pipe sizes whatever they need to be to obtain that 2 feet per second. So hopefully that answers that question.
I think it does. Hopefully, Joe. So the answer in a shorter way, Joe, is it's coming in one version or another. Yes.
Yeah. With manufacturers, things come really slow. That big wheel turns, but it turns slow. So.
Well, we got to make sure it's right the first time when we bring it out too.
We're going to try to. Yeah.
We don't want you guys installing bad systems out there based upon the recommendations that we put out there. So Emma has asked about control strategies, especially with tankless. And with a tankless unit, a lot of the manufacturers nowadays are starting to have their own controls and bypass valves and three-way valves built into it. But for us, the couple of different ways that we control, there's 2 ways that we really control, that we prefer to see hot water recirc controlled with. And it doesn't have to limit with tankless. The limitation is more on the flow side than it is with the control side. So when you're talking tankless, it has to be your pipe size or how you're doing your recirc. So a lot of recirc on tankless needs to be with a dedicated return line. Is some of the best ways to do it. So we have one system that is a retrofit that we call the Taco Genie. Now the Taco Genie system is a circulator that goes underneath the furthest fixture from the house. Circ goes underneath the sink, and we use a crossover connection where we will connect the the cold water supply and the hot water supply together with the circulator in the middle of that, which will then turn on when there's a call for hot water recirculation. And we call it the genie because it's on command. You tell it when you want it to run. So basically, the simple ways to operate it is you walk into the room, it has a motion sensor, and it turns on.
Yeah.
All right. And it runs for 15 seconds, 30 seconds or so, shuts off. It has a button switch that you can hit. So if you don't want the motion sensor, there's a button switch that you can hit and mount it right on the countertop, right on the wall next to it. And then there's a remote that you can do, a wireless remote that we can do with the Genie style system.
Dave?
Yes, sir.
Let me clarify, just because of the way it came across, I know you know better. That is available as a remodel product, as Dave's describing, but you don't have to use it underneath the sink.
No.
I just want to clarify that. Okay. Some people,
Right.
some people get that wrong from our literature, right? We almost tell them that that's what you got to do with it, but no, it could go right at the tankless. It could be installed at the tankless. So go ahead.
Yeah, that would be a retrofit application. As a recirc with a dedicated return line, the circ is back at the water heater itself, and you still have those same controls. You just got to run the wires out to the furthest fixtures that you're working with. So that's what's great about the Genie on retrofit and dedicated return line. That one probably uses the least amount of power out of all of our systems out there because it's only on command, when a homeowner needs it. So if any homeowner is ever concerned about how much power they're using with recirc, you go after that respect. A lot of other systems that we are doing right now is being controlled by our smart plug. And the smart plug is a learning system, and it's going to learn when you use hot water in the house and runs the pump only for those time periods. As you can tell, this is really simple to install. All right. I'll show the back side of it. You plug it into the wall. Hopefully you get the circulator with a line cord. We have our circs with line cords. Plug that into there. Down here, temperature sensor. So this is down at your water heater. All right, temperature sensor here. We even give you the zip tie to zip tie the sensor onto the pipe itself, okay? And you're done.
Yeah.
And this is going to learn when you use hot water and only run the pump for those time periods. So it's kind of like that Nest thermostat that everybody loves getting, right? Why does a homeowner like a Nest thermostat? It's because it learns your schedule and it sets the schedules up that way. Not because you can log into it every 5 minutes and see what the temperature is in your house when you're not there. Mostly it's so you can, it programs itself. And that's what's nice about this. And if you don't have a fixed schedule that you don't want anything to learn, then we have a pulse mode where it does 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off all day, all night.
Cuts it
You
down
guys ready
by
for this?
2/3. Yeah, Johnny, you've got the show. Go.
All right, I'm ready. I just want everybody to know we did it with Skippy all natural super chunk.
Oh, I love chunky.
I do too. And St. Clement's Danish blue cheese crumbles.
Nice.
All right. And here is the sandwich. Okay. Made on Dave's killer white bread done right.
Yeah.
And here we go. Are we ready?
Go for it. Drum roll.
Before I do it, let me just open up the water first.
Why?
Just in case. Just in case. All right, here we go. Ready?
We even heard that bite.
That's different. That's different.
So hopefully whoever told you to try that is on and he's singing your praises or whatever.
Whoever told me to try this, I'd like to meet him someday. We have something to talk about.
Yeah, now that you tried it, you going to finish it?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course. I'm not going to give this to the dog. He's my friend.
Oh, that's bad. All right, so while he's chewing, Dave, what else we got? We got anything that we can answer?
Oh yeah, there were
coughing
a
now.
couple that came in, so I
Turn
gotta
your
get back.
mic off.
What's that?
No, I'm
okay.
talking to John. Yeah.
All right, so I just gotta look. There's a bunch others that came in here. I gotta scroll back up and find them. Okay. Oh, Bob was asking about can't find a flow through a tankless heater to populate the chart. Now you may find a couple of different ways with the tankless manufacturer. They may have a chart with numbers based upon flow. They may actually show a curve. All right, so you're going to see the head and gallons per minute flow on there. So you're going to have to dig it out yourself, know your flow, and then just go find the head that way. Sometimes they just have a little asterisk somewhere in the manual and say, call us. That they didn't put it in print. Yeah. So
not good.
Yeah, so take a look at it that way. Each manufacturer shows it just a little bit differently.
Yeah, here's the one question that didn't come up yet that I anticipated I hadn't heard yet, but some people will say, well, my manufacturer says I shall have a minimum of 2 gallons a minute when recirculating. Think about that.
It kind of came up before, yeah. I think it did, but it was like implied, yeah.
Well, does that mean that every time somebody opens a faucet, you're going to get 2 gallons a minute through the tankless? No.
Right, I know.
So you can argue that. Well, I'm telling you, always pay attention what the manufacturer says, but ask them why. Okay, they should be smart enough and have the ability to give you the reason if they're saying you shall have a minimum flow. Yes, we understand you need a half GPM to fire the thing. That's not what we're talking about. You know, like I showed you 1.6 and I had people say, well, I must have 2. Why do you must have 2? You know, and they can't answer the question.
Right,
they can't answer the question.
Yeah. Your lav faucet's only going to pull a 1
or 1.5.
Right. So if your lav faucet's only doing 1 gallon a minute, I know. So it's a conversation that you need to have with your manufacturer that you're using too. Yes, definitely. Yep.
And remember, you can change that to 2 gallons a minute, but you're going to have to deal with the consequences.
So Terry was asking about, are the fields auto-populating from previous data entries? The only time the data entry might be saved, that's more of your machine, all right, and what app you're using. I mean, not app, but what Internet Explorer program that you're using, if it's keeping any of that data in there. So you saw some of it pre-populated from Rick from filling it out before. So if you happen to use the same one all the time, then it's going to be nice and easy. You don't have to type it. But that's only when you're making that spec sheet at the very end, will you see those numbers or automatic data show up. So, all right, let me scroll a little bit further. Okay, Enoch, I frequently see mixing valves with failed mixing valves or shower valves where cold water is drawn into the hot water system. I'm wondering if this would be reduced by mounting the pump on the supply. If I understand it correctly, then it would actually raise the pressure of the hot system at the fixtures rather than reducing it if the pump was mounted on the return. Well, we're not really changing the pressure in the system when we add a circ. We're just creating a pressure differential, and we want to lower, and we're not looking for a big pump here. We're looking for small circs. That's why we like using this 006E3. You can really dial it down to what you need on an application. So Enoch, it might have to deal with what pipe you're seeing, what circulator size you're using there. All right. If you noticed in here, I want to point this out. This is huge.
Huge.
When you look at this DHWR app that Rick has done, did anybody see any place in there to talk about how high the furthest fixture is? what the height was? Height has absolutely nothing to do with sizing a recirc pump. And I run into this all the time. Yeah. It's only length of pipe and the size of pipe it took to get there and the gallons per minute. Okay, so height doesn't matter. I get phone calls all the time. Somebody calling me up and they say, hey, Dave, I'm looking for a 009 stainless steel union circulator out there. 009 for what? And recirc, because I'm going up 35-foot high building, 3 stories. No. Yes, the 009 can do 35 foot ahead, but we don't need to lift the water up there. That's what the pressure is coming in from the streets going to give you there. Yeah. Okay, so make sure you pay attention to that. This is just length of pipe.
We're circulating
pressure
water
drop.
just like we do in a heating
Okay.
system. So.
Exactly right. If we didn't put a recirc pump on here, and people say, well, no, that's what it needs. If we didn't use recirc in there, is there water at the high fixture? Yeah,
Yes.
it's already there. We don't need to pump it there. It's already sitting up there. All we're doing is moving it around in a circle and trickling it.
Yep.
We're moving temperature, not gallons. All right. And I saw that earlier from my buddy Rykow that was here. All right. We're moving temperature. That's what we're trying to move around a system.
Yep. Remember what we were saying? It's like the job description of the circulator is to have the water there already. That means water behind the wall, where you're going to pull water off of, is already warm. It's already done its job. It doesn't have to be running.
Yeah, just keep it loaded. Keep the hot water line loaded.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I am not going to make that again.
You choked her down though, didn't you?
Now there's still a good bit of it left. I very rarely leave a plate. I very rarely leave anything on the plate.
Yep, me too. My problem.
Yep, me too. Absolutely. This time I'm going to make an exception to that rule, and I cannot in good conscience give it to the dog. He will hate me.
Oh, and Rich is here. So Rich Sumner's from up north in Toronto.
Yeah, that I got to tell you, I might have done it wrong. I don't know. Maybe a slice of blue cheese might be better than the crumbles, possibly. I also saw when I was looking it up a slice of cheddar, and I think someone mentioned that in the comments earlier. Excuse me.
Pound his chest.
I might try that, but I'm glad. I'll look at it this way, Rich. I'm glad I had the experience. Now it's off my list. I don't have to do it again.
So Jim Tamblin types in here. He says he has a whole house system, 5.5 gallons a minute, 60-degree rise. Ream instruction manual shows recirc pump size to a minimum of 5 GPM at 25 foot ahead plus building head, provided the loop is thermostatically controlled and a timer is used to shut it off during peak periods. Now I've seen a couple of different piping diagrams out there, and it may also have to deal with a storage tank, possibly. So now what you've got is a pump just like a heating pump, not necessarily a recirc pump, but they are calling it a recirc pump. I have seen that in instruction manuals where they call it a recirc pump, but it's not a recirc pump. Think of it as your heating circulator, all right, running that 5.5 gallons a minute, and it's got that gallon and that foot ahead through that heat exchanger, so that because they want the water heater to trigger off that way because you're drawing from a tank and the water heater is adding to the tank itself. So then it becomes basically a heating circulator in that respect, but it has been called a recirc pump. So we just got to be concerned and careful on definitions here, because what we call a heating circulator and a recirc circulator is two different animals, in how you get the numbers that you're looking at. Then Bob actually says, what do you think about Alexa to turn on the pump and program the length of time? Sure, definitely. All right.
Right.
I mean, you guys, I've got them here in my house too. I've got little smart plugs throughout my house, turning on lamps and whatnot, but the smart plugs already has that done for you too. Now you don't have to program it. You don't have to change anything. And if your schedule changes all of a sudden, this will learn it too. So this has a 7-day calendar built in, and as many events a day that you have that you wanted to learn, it will put into the calendar. And then all of a sudden, so after that 7 days, you got it all nice and happy, and for a month straight, it works perfectly. You use water at those time periods. Then all of a sudden, week 5, your schedule gets all whacked out. This will recognize that and adjust. So that's the nice thing about this compared to, again, having to program an Alexa system or an online system. You can do that too. Excellent. This is all done for you straight up.
Now, not to change the subject, but Richard just put in, I don't know where the grilled part came from. I've only done it with crackers. Now you tell me. Well, no, actually, when I looked this up online, I got to tell you, I found a bunch of recipes for this made like a grilled cheese, which
Like a
made sense to
panini.
me. Because if anybody was here on Takeo After Dark during the summer sessions, our session with Kevin Shea on combustion analysis, we got to talking about a grilled fluffernutter. Peanut butter and marshmallow fluff made like a grilled cheese. Now try that. That'll change your life. Okay. That is a
Whoa.
life-changing sandwich. I have never experienced anything so delightful in my life. It will make you a better person. I believe that. This one, not so much, but the grilled fluffernutter will. So I just, they said to make it like a grilled cheese online. And then they also had variations. Somebody said bacon. Yeah, peanut butter, bacon, and cheddar actually is supposed to be actually pretty cool. So maybe we'll try that next week. It's St. Patrick's Day. What the hell, right?
Yeah. Peanut butter and pastrami. I love them. Make a great
Ooh.
sandwich. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. I saw a
All right.
question up here
Yeah,
earlier
back
about.
on into- I'm going down the list here. I don't know
Okay.
if I saw one here from Enoch who was saying, can you mount the genie on the supply for a retrofit and use a crossover tee at the furthest fixture? Well, I wouldn't want to see the genie. I guess you could if you were using the smaller 006 genie. So we have 3 different models to your 00 to your genie system: 006, 008, 0011. If you are using a tankless, you do not want to use your crossovers. All right, because the crossover valve is a very low pressure drop. I mean, a high pressure drop, very low flow, 0.3 gallons a minute going through these things.
Yeah.
So again, like we said, we need that 0.5 in order for the water heater to trigger. Then this wouldn't work. But if you had a tank style system for your genie, most definitely you could, but and the technology behind that would be pretty neat to do that too. I'd probably go with the smart plug instead, and go with ECM. Right now the genie does not have an ECM component to it. It's just going to be straight out this way. So
There's a couple of good smart plug questions. One was when using the smart plug with the hot link, and if the hot link valve closes, how does the pump know? And the smart plug tells the pump to run. Does the pump run? How does the pump know to shut off? Well, the thing is, the pump's going to run,
Yeah.
and it's going to deadhead. And
Yeah.
here's the thing: we get really wrapped up about deadheading, but we're talking little pumps here. Deadheading's a problem with big pumps, and
Yeah.
somehow that's been applied to little pumps. You don't necessarily want to go ahead and intentionally deadhead a pump, but with the little ECM circulators, deadheading is very much a non-issue because they kind of slow down themselves to almost nothing. So when you're deadheading a really little pump like that, it's not the kind of thing, and you're deadheading it for 10 minutes max.
hey, Rick, you want to pull up the pump curve?
Or
You
I'm
still
sorry.
got your screen up
Yeah.
here, so.
So when you're deadheading
my
it for
screen
5
still up?
minutes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, pull it from here, right from the app. Scroll down, go
Okay.
to the app.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pull up the 6E3. Beautiful. All
Yeah.
right. So if that was the maximum flow, where the red dot is that Rick has, now all of a sudden if you had a crossover in there, now you can use this app also for doing your crossover style systems. And it'll show you where to run the circulator and where to set the circulator up at. So that's right there. Let's say that's the design dot where your flow is going to be. Well, now all of a sudden your flow goes to 0. All right. And it's just going to move to the left. All right. So you don't have a system curve anymore. The valve is closed. All right. So you're not moving any gallons. Yes, you're going to have high head there, but it's not doing anything. But this was happened to be a high head system. All right. At 12 foot ahead that Rick was designing. But now, remember that was sort of the tankless system and not with this in there. So, but most of my experience right now is when you design up a crossover style system with a tank, you're operating almost at low, at 5 foot ahead. 5 foot ahead. All right. So when that crossover valve, the hot link valve shuts off, you don't have much there. So yeah, like John said, now it's a really, really small circulator because you got the dial on the front to set it to where you need it to go.
And think about it, at most, it's going to deadhead for 5 minutes. Not anything we would tell you to worry about or be concerned about.
And if we did have a concern with it, I've got one in my house that way already for the last 5 years. So,
So
Now, the good thing is Keiko's going to warranty it, right? We've tested this stuff together as a system, and if there's anything wrong with it, we're going to stand behind it, like we always do.
another smart plug question was with the Takeo smart plug in the first week learning mode, and you're pulsing 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off, how does the sensor know when you're actually using hot water? That's a great question, Roger. That's a great question, and Dave has a great answer.
it just does. It's all
No,
PFM,
no,
man.
no.
You're effing
All right, you had your chance.
I know it's not that. It's not that. So what it does is it learns events because of this temperature sensor that you're strapping onto the pipe, and you've got about 8 feet of wire here, I believe it is. Try to use as much of it as you can. Unless if you got a mixing valve in, then you can put it right after the mixing valve. But you can strap this onto the pipe, and what it's doing is it doesn't look for temperature. It looks for temperature change and a duration at that temperature. So it looks for events. So all of a sudden you start drawing water and the temperature goes up in the pipe, then you use it for a while, and then the temperature falls. All right. And it's setting up its own numbers and parameters in there on what that temperature is. So it doesn't actually look for a temperature. It's doing its own calculations for that rise, duration, and then fall, and says, bang, that was my event. So that's what it's actually going to learn. Maybe it may not register a quick hand washing. All right. If the water was cold or something like that, it may not recognize that, but it's going to recognize taking a shower, running laundry, running the dishwasher. So usually those couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening, it has registered in there. And like I said, if you don't have a set schedule, like I had mine on a schedule about a year ago.
We were all on a schedule.
And then we
about a year
changed
ago.
it. Yeah. And everybody went and changed it. So all I did is I hit the button on the bottom of mine and changed it to the pulse mode, and just runs all the time now. So we never know when we're going to use hot water in the house. So
will the smart plug work in a retrofit application on a tankless coil or combi boiler? Asks Mel. That's a good question, and it'll work, but it might not be how we want it to work. When you're talking about a tankless, what triggers a tankless? What is it that turns the tankless on? It's flow, right? It's flow. Well, what happens if you if you repeatedly over and over again turn that tankless water heater on, but nobody's using any hot water?
Yeah, not good.
That thing's gonna short cycle like crazy, and you're gonna eventually wear out some very important and very expensive moving parts, to the point where your manufacturer, once they know, because they can tell how many times these things have cycled and for how long, they can say, hey, we're not warrantying this because that's not how we want recirculation to be done here. Yeah. So will it work in terms of making sure you have domestic hot water recirculation? Yeah, but it's really a bad choice in terms of control for that application. And that's why we go with the Genie, and we go with the the manual or the push button on demand type of initiation. Meaning you're gonna go take a shower, you hit the button, bam, the pump comes on, high head pump, evacuate that hot water line of cold or tepid water really, really quickly, and then shut the pump off. The hot water is there, and then you get ready to take a shower. So you're pressing that button when a hot water use is imminent. So we really, really reduce any potential short cycling. That's the better way to do it. Anything on a timer or this smart plug concept is going to kill the water heater prematurely. It's just going to. That's the way it works. So it's not the best way. I don't know if that helps you, Mel. Boy, was that a stunningly brilliant answer and everybody just hushed now, or what? Or what?
I'm trying to catch up on the questions here. There's a whole bunch
pondering.
There's a lot of good questions here. Bob wanted to see the result of a standard pump. If you could show the pump curve for one of our standard selections here, that would be kind of cool. And Enoch asks, is it better to have a spring check or a swing check on a dedicated recirculation line? Will a spring check valve provide too much resistance to flow? Can the pump overcome a spring check valve? The answer is yeah, absolutely they can. When we supply with our heating circulators, when we supply an IFC or an integral flow check, it is a spring check. So in terms of a check valve in the system, absolutely can overcome the resistance or the pressure loss of a swing check. Absolutely can. And there we have the pump curve chart for standard efficiency circulators.
It's just on the larger size here. It's not showing anything smaller, like your 006, 007 sizes that you have. So this is looking a little bit larger just because this was a high head application to get there.
Tankless heater,
so,
right?
Yeah, so it is showing the 009, all right, like I was talking about before. That circulator was designed for way back when for drain back solar systems, where we actually had to pump water up to the collectors, all right? So that's what that really comes into play. Or if you really, or you had a 1,000-foot loop of PEX installed because it came in a 1,000-foot roll. Nobody saw the cutter until the end. So then you might have to take two 009s and put them in series because you got about 70 foot ahead that you need to pump through. So that's the only other times I've used a 009 application wise. So there you go.
Todd Raymond asks, pulse mode bypasses any schedules? Yeah, it just completely changes the operating mode. So it's no longer in the learning mode, it's just in the pulse mode. So yeah, it just wipes them away.
A couple of cool things it has,
Oh, yes.
A couple cool things it has built into the circulator. So it has automatic vacation, which means if nobody uses water, doesn't see the temperature rise, duration, and fall for 36 hours, then the pump just shuts off. The controller shuts down and says, "Oh, you must be away. So we're not going to run anymore. We don't need to heat up the pipes throughout the house. We don't need to kick on the water heater as much any longer. So we're going to shut down until somebody uses water. And once somebody starts using the water, it says, oh, okay, let's wake up a little bit here and start going. And then if it's been on vacation mode for 7 days, it's going to kick on the pump for about 30 seconds once every 7 days to make sure the circ doesn't seize up. So if you go on lengthy vacations or you're going to visit your villa over in the Alps, you'll make sure that you've got water when you get there.
Or down at West Palm Beach, Dave.
Right.
Dave Rockefeller. Gustavo asks, can the Takeo Genie take outside environment conditions, non-freezing? Like, can you put it outside in Florida? No, it has wiring in there. You don't want it to get wet. I mean, you don't want it to be rained on. So no, unfortunately, it's not an outdoor pump. I suppose if you had it in a pool house or something, that would be fine, but it can't be really the outdoors.
It's a relative humidity thing, and I think it's listed. We get our listing based on 95% humidity or less, and that never qualifies for outdoor because when it's raining, it's 100%.
It's very humid, yeah.
Yeah.
So Anthony says, many times I've seen Recirc disconnected. When I asked the homeowner, they reported it costs too much in fuel to operate. So
absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of times it's going to be the wrong control platform set up in there. Wrong size.
Or uninsulated pipes.
Uninsulated pipes are going to do it too. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, the thing about when you think about just plugging it in and letting it run, there's two customer bases that actually prefer that. Okay, one is I remember Bob Dudley telling me that he has customers, and he's up in Park City, Utah, where extraordinarily rich people build extraordinarily large homes that they're going to spend 2 weeks out of a year at, and they don't want any excuses, right? All they want to do is they want to have everything running when they walk in and everything, and then they're going to leave, and then it's got to work the next time, and that's all they care about. One of the things they care most about is any time of the day, 24/7, when I turn on a faucet, I want hot water. I don't want to wait, and I don't want any excuses. So what do you do for them? Yeah, traditionally, what would you do? Plug it in, let it run, let it run, because that's the simplest solution, and it makes them happy. All right. Now, if they're only using it 2 weeks out of the year, and that pump is going to stop running and be disconnected the other 50 weeks of the year, that's probably an okay control strategy. Would you agree, Rick? I mean, it's
Well,
not perfect, it's not textbook, but if it's running 2 weeks continuously and then it doesn't run for 50, how much damage can it do to pipe?
I can't say that it's acceptable, but I could see people doing it, and the impact on the piping system won't be as bad if it was the other way, where it ran all the time. So
Right. It's just
again,
you're
we're
running it.
trying to get them not to do it, but
Right.
we
Exactly.
understand they're going to do it anyway.
But there's a problem that needs to be solved, and that solves it. Now, the smart plug solves that problem as well, and
Yeah.
it solves it in a much better way, which is
Absolutely.
and you're also talking about a clientele that cares not a jot nor a tittle about the cost. So it's
Yeah.
fine. The other people that are going to use that plug it in and forget about a control strategy is going to be the complete other end of the spectrum, where the recirc has to be installed to be able to fill in a box on the checklist to say, I've done it, I've met the requirement, I just put in the cheapest freaking thing I can find. That's a cheapo pump with a line cord, plug it in and forget about it.
Builder
Right?
model. Yeah, builder.
I wasn't going to name names, but you understand. Now,
Yeah.
that's
Sorry, I'm bad at
that's the least expensive solution, but that's the one that creates the most problems. Again, a simple inexpensive add-on like the smart plug makes that problem go away. So again, it's just a matter of, it is very interesting about how people look at solutions to problems. And one of the things I've learned, and Dave pointed this out, and Rick, you've talked about it as well, is, this is a problem. Waiting for domestic hot water is a problem most people don't realize that they even have,
Right.
right? Because in order to realize you have a problem, you have to realize that there is a potential solution to said problem. And most people just say, well, that's the way it is. I didn't know. I didn't know that it doesn't have to be like this. Well, no, it doesn't. We do have these potential solutions, and slotting the right solution into the right applications is the key, and finding what works in your market for your customer base can be a real winner. And again, as Rick pointed out, it doesn't have to be a big pump. The small is good, and when time is on your side, small is beautiful, right? When
Yeah.
you have time on your side, it is remarkable how small these pumps can be.
Yeah, I will clarify one thing on what you were saying. The smart plug in its vacation mode is great. The only thing that, like one of those high-end homes, they only show up, for 2 weeks during the ski season kind of thing, is the only thing that wakes up a smart plug is the first requirement for hot water. So that first time they're gonna have to wait, and
Yeah,
that might cause that contractor to get a phone call. So you might want to
well,
figure something
there
else
you got
out there.
a caretaker of the house who's getting the house ready for them to show up.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
That would.
one of
Yeah.
the things that should be on their checklist.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything to take into consideration when using a combi boiler, or is it basically the same as a tankless? Yeah, pretty much. It is pretty much basically the same as a tankless. Yeah. Yep.
See.
Very good. All right. Is smart plug approved for light commercial use? It's based on the size of the pump, Zach. What's the amp rating on that?
Anything
6
under
amps.
6 amps.
6 amps. That's going to handle an awful lot of applications for you, Zach.
Here's the thing to be careful of, though. So the commercial requirements a lot of times will have something to do with the restrictions of a plug device in a mechanical room area. So you have to check your electrical codes there. The other thing that we've run across is drop ceilings, a plenum area, and sometimes the local electrical codes won't allow you to have a plug device in a drop ceiling area. So location will normally dictate whether or not you can use it. But by all means, based on how big a pump it'll run, absolutely. And we've done some cool things, at least specified some cool things to be done with smart plug in multiple return pump applications. So anyway, it has been done successfully, but it's going to be a local jurisdiction is going to override anything.
Very good. Terry Turner asks, what does the motion sensor look like? I don't know if do you have one there, Dave?
I don't have one here, but it's small. It can fit right on a regular single gang box,
I'll bring it up.
or light switch cover.
I'll bring something up.
And you know, it's got the little bulb that sticks out a little bit. And it looks like most of the ones that you'll see that alarm companies can put in your house for motion sensing. Instead of putting sensors on every window of the house, they go ahead and put that motion sensor down the hallway. Same look of that, you know, so they're not very big. You know, and where I usually put them in a house, in a bathroom, is right over the door. You know, stuff it in the corner, right over the door. You know, and it's all white up there too. So, and then you put it up high enough so the dog doesn't trip it when he goes and drinks out of the toilet and stuff.
Well, if it's a little dog, it won't be any issues. What they
Right,
told me.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
and
okay.
you could put multiple sensors in a house. It doesn't have to just be one. You can put in sensors all throughout the house, but one circulator. So you daisy chain the wires. It's not a wireless setup. It's hardwired in there. And as it goes throughout the whole house, there you go. There's the picture of it. And that's what the Genie looks. Right underneath the motion sensor is the button switch.
Yep.
And then over on the right-hand side is if you need to convert it to wireless. So
Two pieces there.
yeah, it's a two-piece. You hook up the wireless, and the wires are already sticking out of the controller itself just to wire it in.
Hey,
So
Dave,
very
tell them what this is for, because a lot of people don't get it still.
Yeah.
Ooh.
This and this is a much different design in recirculating water throughout a project. So what this does, you walk into the bathroom, there's probably going to be a high chance you're going to want to use hot water in the next minute or two. All right. I'm assuming you're going to want to wash your hands. So the motion sensor gets tripped, turns on. The pump, the next thing that happens to the circulator is it goes ahead, and that little thing that Rick was pointing to is a temperature sensor. And it's going to look there first to see, all right, one, is my temperature below 99 degrees? And if it's not, fine, we're going to stay off. We don't need to recirc because that means probably somebody has used the water and I don't need to turn on. So when I mean by the greenest system that we have, it's not going to run excessively because somebody walked in, another person walked in to the bathroom and tripped it. So if the temperature is below, or let's say room temperature, 70 degrees, all right, it's been off for a while. The pump is then going to turn on, but it's at that temperature is not looking for temperature. It's not looking for 120 to get there. It is looking for an 8-degree temperature rise. All right, so 8 degrees from when it turned on. And it says, all right, I turned on, it's 70 degrees. I'm going to shut off at 78 because water getting pulled out of your tank is going to move like a slug. And not slug as in snail, but slug as in right here. All right, here's your 70-degree water coming that was already in the pipe, and right behind it's going to be the $1.20. And yeah, you might get a little bit of blending that happens here. And then as soon as it gets to the sensor, it says, oh, I'm done, shut off. All right, so we don't want it to get to 120 there. So this is going to help keep the system off for extended periods of time, but also run it for a very short amount of time too. We don't want long run times. As we were talking before, why is it designed? You know, we've almost designed this for tankless because you don't want that long run time. All right, going back to the water heater itself, it only needs to run for a short time period when there's no draw being done on it, and we just want to move temperature in the pipe, as Anthony says. I love that term, Anthony. I'm going to use that forever now. So, and I'm going to have to put a little, you know, CM next to, you know, copyrighted by Anthony.
You're gonna need a little jar to keep putting his royalties in every time you use it too. I mean, that's
stuff there. Yeah. Yep.
That's only fair. Do you recommend tying the return line into the bottom of the tank water heater or into the cold water supply? Does
Yes.
this change when you have multiple tanks in parallel series, series?
I was going to say in the beginning, doesn't make a difference. Yeah, because most of your tanks are going to have a tube going down and still going to drop it into the bottom. I find whatever's easiest to do your piping. Personal preference would be into the cold water supply. So in case you ever needed to change your tank out, you don't have a pipe in your way. You know, that's the way I look at it. You don't have to cut that pipe out and redo it again. As multiple tanks, I guess in multiple tanks, I would do it in the common header, right? The common supply header that's feeding your tanks, and then making sure you got check valves appropriately, so you're not getting, you know, water going in the wrong direction.
There's a little booklet that I put together for this 4-hour class that I was talking about that gives a lot of different illustrations of how to pipe the water heaters. It's really the same thing that Taco's already got in their, you know, black and white line drawings that come with every, almost every device, right? So I just made them pretty and put them in Visio and that sort of thing. But one of the things that we have to be careful of, local codes, in fact, out west, California kind of sets a lot of this stuff. They will not let you put water in the bottom of the tank through that boiler drain tapping, because a lot of times, and I can hand this to them, a lot of people do not clean their water heaters. What does that mean? They don't flush them. They don't get all the accumulation that falls to the bottom of the tank. And what can happen, not always, but you actually get so much muck on the bottom, the drain doesn't even work anymore. Some of you can attest to that, right? You've opened the bottom of a drain and water heater, nothing comes out. That's because it's so limed up and full of anything. That means a recirc it might not have worked, but it might have stopped that from happening in the first place because of the movement of water around the tank. So again, just you got to check with your local codes on what they let you do and not.
Very good. Here's one from Omer. I don't know if you guys got this one yet. Would you, Dave, this one's for Dave. Would you say it's better to have the 006E pump on the supply side of a mega storage tank that is supplied by the boiler, or on the return side when I have 2 recirculating returns with a check valve? Not sure where we're going with that. I'm having trouble visualizing that. I don't know about you, Dave. But then again, you didn't ask me. It's your problem. You figure it out. Let's see how good Dave is.
Dave, I'll pull up those drawings and we can go through each one of them. I'll let you just talk about them, okay?
I'm just trying to think about this one from Omer here.
Well,
on a mega storage tank that is supplied by the boiler. Oh, okay.
Indirect, maybe. Oh no, just storage. So they've got a hot water generator.
They're using it, yeah, using the tankless as a. Oh, it's just a boiler going. Okay. Oh, all right. When I have 2 recirc returns with a check valve. Oh.
Yeah, I'm thinking whether it's on the supply or return, again, probably doesn't matter much.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding this question correctly, I don't think it matters much.
Let's look at these two. Let's look at these 2 sketches right here. Here's where the pump is feeding, coming in the top of the heater, right? Comes back down through here. Notice this, that this circulator will not impart any additional resistance to the water out to these fixtures. Would you agree with that?
Right. Yep.
Okay. Let's look at the next one. Oops, going the wrong direction.
So when it's not running. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
When it's not running, this imparts resistance. We don't give you a CV value or anything, but it absolutely imparts additional resistance to the water flowing out of these fixtures if you're forced to do this. Okay, so let's keep going. What's the alternative? If they'll allow you to, you can go at the bottom of the water heater. Now that won't take place because now the fixtures are being fed out here.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
I never thought of it that way. See, everybody learned something here. I love it.
We're sponges.
That's like I say, of the 3 of us, I'm the best looking, clearly. All right. Dave is the charming one. Rick's the smart one. Okay.
That's BS. That's what that is.
Well, you don't think I'm the best looking of the 3?
That's right.
Sir, yes, sir.
That's all I need to hear. I don't even care if you believe it or not. Okay. So yeah, Omer said it's for an 8 unit condo rather. 2 returns tied do a 3/4 inch T coming back to the tank.
Ooh, all right. So now it's if okay, you got two separate T's. They get to be a challenge. All right, as in, what's the length of those T's? They're probably not exactly the same length. So what you're going to make sure you need in there is a balancing valve. All right, you need to put a balancing valve on either side, not a ball valve, and try and tweak it. You'll go absolutely crazy trying to do that. You're going to need a good DHW balancing valve to get you the flow that you need on either side of it, because otherwise one side's going to work and the other one's not going to get the flow, and someone's going to be complaining. So we got to make sure you get a good balancing valve on those dedicated return lines coming back, and then
A circuit setter, right, Dave?
Yeah.
Circuit setter.
But it has to be NSF listed, and they're
Right.
kind of harder to find. So
Right.
careful.
I have seen them. I did have a spec on my computer somewhere. I don't remember where it is.
Gustavo has an interesting question. 2 recirculating lines for maybe 2 different temperatures, like 180 for a commercial dishwasher and 120 for a bathroom supply. Yeah, I think you'd have 2 different temperatures. I question whether, and this might be a code thing, so I'm going to plead ignorance on it. Would you need a recirc line for a dishwasher if it was its own line?
Some of them
it's going to use the same amount of water whether there's hot water there or not, right?
Well, if it's a commercial dishwasher, there's probably a couple. The older styles, they had a requirement to have a minimum of 160 to the dishwasher, right? That's that disinfectant. Remember when you looked at Legionella chart, not that we're talking about Legionella, right? We get up at 158, we disinfect. So 160 for round numbers. Now, most of the new ones actually have the ability, they have electric, point of use heaters that bring that water temperature up before they do the rinse cycle and all that stuff. So in some cases you would need really high temperature there in days of old, but nowadays I think they take care of it. Even residential high-end dishwashers actually have elements that heat the water up. So
right. And that what and even if you introduce cold water to it, it's going to get if it's 180, it's going to get real hot real soon and disinfect in that respect in that application anyway. Gustavo's talking about some breweries. So yeah, breweries would have that application, absolutely. And another question from Omer. Question early about the drawing Rick showed where the tank and tankless was side by side. Are they piped in series?
That was just showing one or the other.
If you look, it says or. There's an or in between them. Sorry.
So it was saving space on the screen. We probably showed it really fast. Yeah, we had that a few times in our manuals too.
Sorry. Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent.
Well, this is another fun session. So we still got 69 folks that are still on board with us. So awesome yet again. Thank you so much. And I'm guessing Richard Sumner's out there trying to think of some other concoction he can try and get me to eat.
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm going to take everything you say with a grain of salt. Pardon the pun. Yeah. Although I have learned that back bacon is the same as Canadian bacon, is the same as what's called pea meal.
Or tasso.
Tasso, now that I didn't know.
Yeah, tasso. It's kind of a Louisiana, southern thing from where my papa's from.
Oh boy, I like that.
Tasso.
In my carnivore days, I loved Canadian bacon. And it was interesting to note that you would think Canadian bacon, if you went to Canada, they would call Canadian bacon simply bacon, but they didn't. They called it back bacon or pea meal.
Well, another question came in from Enoch here, and it says, might be a question more for the tankless, but do you know why the tankless is fine using the internal pump with a crossover like the hot link valve? Why is it fine there and compared to what we were saying? Well, mostly also because they also have a built-in bypass valve that is going to get some flow going back to the heat exchanger again. So that's also what they're doing. So they are sending some flow out to the fixture and to the crossover valve, and then some flow is actually internal across the heat exchanger to make sure they get above that ½ gallon a minute. Yeah. So especially when they have the built-in circ. When they have that built-in circ for recirc into into the units themselves, there's usually a bypass three-way valve, usually behind the circulator. So if you ever experience any issues with that, hopefully it's not not that bypass valve that's in the back there. It's a pain in the neck.
Some of the manufacturers make their own bypass valve that has a lot higher flow, which will give them the minimum of 2 gallons or whatever they want for that. So again, they're providing their own proprietary product there, and that might answer that question as well.
Depending on how the return is piped, you don't want to mix high temp return with low temp return. You can get flow through the return system from one fixture to another. I guess you're talking about are we talking about the tanklesses there, Jim? I
think he's talking about multiple return lines, some being higher temperature or lower, but
gotcha,
check valves, again, every time when we have multiple return lines coming together into a common return header, right where those intersect, whether you're using balancing valves or like we like to do, we'll put a strategically small size circulator in lieu of a balancing valve, right? Because it makes sense, right? We must have an integral flow check or a check valve installed in any of the situations. So if it's a balancing valve, it needs a check valve. Okay, if it's a circuit setter, it needs a check valve. If it's a globe valve, it needs a check valve. So that helps prevent what I think he's describing there.
Very good. Does the smart plug sensor work on plastic pipe? Yes. It just, as Dave said, just typed in there, it only looks for temperature changes. It's not looking for a temperature. It's just looking for temperature changes. So yeah, great question there, George.
Hey, let's elaborate on that a little bit, because a lot of people, the PEX manufacturers, which we were all part of, right? They're talking about how much more insulative the pipe is. Absolutely is. There's no question of that. But if you have 180 degree, let's just use that number, 180 degree water inside the pipe, guess what? The outside of the pipe is going to be 180 degrees in a relatively short period of time. Granted, copper pipe is going to be, a metal pipe that has higher conductivity is going to get there quicker, but so will PEX. I guarantee you can't grab a piece of PEX pipe and hold on to it if it's got 180 degrees in it.
Yep.
So I've tried, okay? So I burnt myself. So understand the outside temperature is going to be what the pipe or the water temperature is. It just takes a little longer to get there.
Now, I don't know if you went over this when you guys got started, since I was running late, and I had to restart everything like 4 or 5 times in order to get the sound to work on my end. But did you talk about much on a why recirc or how many recirc, out there and stuff like that?
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, in terms of why domestic hot water recirculation?
No,
oh boy.
We touched on it, but we didn't do that whole, I talked about 12,000 gallons being wasted per family of 4 and that sort of thing. So.
Okay.
In terms of why domestic hot water recirculation, again, we did talk a little bit about it. It's a problem. It's a problem most people don't know that they have, right? And it's a problem, and they don't know it's a problem because they don't know if there's a solution. They don't know that they don't have to live this way. And it's interesting, as homes have gotten bigger over the decades, this has become a bigger and bigger concern. If you lived in a house, like the house I grew up in was maybe 1,200 square feet. It was not a big house, and it was built in 1910. All right. So the plumbing in older homes, for the most part, was in a stack, right? Because all you had for drainage, waste, and vent was, cast iron, lead and oakum cast iron. You didn't, it was very, very expensive to build a sprawling house with fixture unit clusters in remote parts of the structure. It was very expensive. Most houses weren't built that way. And the ones that were, well, they didn't care, right? they didn't care about the cost. So in that respect, all the plumbing was stacked. So the run from the water heater to the farthest fixture away might have been 30 feet, right? Maybe 30, 40 feet max. You didn't have that long of a wait for hot water. You never thought about it. But the advent of PVC and ABS drain pipe changed everything, because now, starting in the late 60s, early 70s, it was very easy and very inexpensive to design homes to have fixture clusters remote. Houses could get physically bigger and still be reasonably expensive. You didn't have the cast iron that you had to run everywhere. A lot of people don't see that, but PVC pipe changed the way we build houses. I absolutely believe that, because it made that sprawl more possible at lower pricing. So with that, houses did start to get bigger physically, and because they could get bigger physically, they would have more fixture units, more bathrooms. So we have maybe two and a half to three times as many fixture units in a home built, let's say 2010, 2015, compared to a home built in 1967. All right. So when you have more fixtures, more hot water fixtures, to supply those hot water fixtures, you need bigger pipe, right? We're talking about the 1-inch trunks, and then you go to 3/4 and then the 1/2 inch to feed those far. You need bigger pipe to carry the volume. On top of that, we have instituted over the years lower fixture flow rate requirements as per code. All right. So, shower can't do 17 gallons a minute anymore, that kind of thing. So lower fixture flow rates. So you've got longer distances, bigger pipes, lower fixture flow rates. All that leads to what kind of velocity? Lower velocities. Add all that together, plus the longer run, it takes 17, maybe 18 times longer for hot water to get to that farthest fixture in a recent vintage home compared to a home built maybe in 1968, 1970. So if you live in an old house, you don't have a problem. If you live in a new house and have lived in newer homes, you know that it takes a long time for hot water to get there, but you don't know that there's a solution. All right. So most people live with it. The solution comes from the guy who's in there fixing something. The solution comes in retrofit applications from you. When you're in there fixing something, part of your discussion can be, how long do you wait for hot water? Did you know we could fix that? Well, what's involved? Well, then you tell them what's involved. Then you have something called you use the Hot Link Plus E for that retrofit application with the crossover valve at the farthest fixture, the 006E3 pump in the mechanical room, the smart plug to run it all. Bada bing, bada boom, you're good to go. That's a solution to a problem that they didn't know they had, but they knew they had, but they didn't know that it didn't have to be that way. So to me, those are the whys and the wherefores. Now, to me, when you're looking at different customers for domestic hot water recirculation, you have the biggest bulk is going to be convenience. I don't want to wait. All right. I'm sick of waiting for hot water. Now, why they're sick of waiting for hot water could be because, hey, I just don't like standing in the bathroom for 3 minutes, buck naked with my hand in the shower, waiting for the water to get hot. All right. Or they don't like the wasting of water. Okay, water's a resource. Nobody likes running water down the drain for 2.5, 3 minutes when you don't need to. Like Rick said earlier, you're paying to have it come in, you're paying to get rid of it, and you're paying extra at the water heater to make it. Okay, that's not good for the environment. It's not good for the wallet. It's just not good all the way around. You have customers, as we said earlier, who don't care. I just want hot water at every fixture. I don't care what it costs. I just don't give. The only thing I don't want are excuses, right? Then you get the customers who say, I got to check the box off. I don't care I don't even care if it works. All right. I just want the cheapest thing you got. So you got all these different combative customer bases. What solutions do you provide for each one? That's when you start to think and discuss what you can do. Think about what solutions are available to you and what you would recommend to each customer base. And understanding that small is good. If there's a tankless, we were having a different discussion, and we can certainly make use of that smart plug in most applications that don't involve tankless. Well, in all applications that don't involve tankless. So that was kind of long and rambling, But to me, that's how you start to look at how you look at the market and look at your customer base and start to provide them with options and solutions. You know, you don't want to give them too many options, you know, maybe two in this case, or just say, hey, this is what I recommend. We sell a lot of these, our customers love them, and here's how it solves the problem. And then give them some realistic expectations, and away you go. So, and to me, that's why why a homeowner would want domestic hot water recirculation. That's why it's a problem. And that's for me, that's how I'd frame it out. Now, one thing I wouldn't do is I would never say this is going to save you money and it's going to, you know, my favorite term here, right? It's going to pay for itself in X amount of years. It's not. Okay, it's just not. That's not how these things work. It's a convenience item. It speeds things up. People pay for convenience,
Sure.
right? Now more than ever, people pay for convenience, right? You know,
Yeah.
it's you know, saying time and money are interchangeable. You can save more of one by spending more of the other, man. So this is a convenience primarily. It's a lifestyle thing primarily. Is it going to save money on your water bill / electric or natural gas bill? Potentially, if you control it intelligently, it can be a net gain. Is it a lot of money? No. Is it going to change your life? No, but it's a net gain. Is it going to quote unquote pay for itself? I mean, is what you save going to offset the purchase price? Probably not anytime soon, you know, but that's, if you're selling it that way, you're pushing a rope up a hill. Don't do it, you know. Start to think about the convenience, start to think about what the end result is. You know, as Dave has said many times, they're not buying this because they want heat. They're buying it because they want warm floors. In this case, they're not buying it because they want a recirc system. They're buying it because they don't want to wait for the hot water to show up. You know, so understand what your customers are asking for and take that approach. So that's
So I saw the,
there we go.
I
We got
saw
more questions here.
yeah, no, I saw the manual for the Renai unit. It's just a blanket statement in there. You're putting a recirc in there, you must size it for 5 gallons a minute at 25 foot ahead. Period.
Get a letter of clarification.
It's
Yeah.
in their manual.
Because
So
you're not getting 5 gallons a minute through the fixtures. So why are they demanding it on a recirc? Doesn't make any
Right.
sense to me. So I'm okay. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying show me the science.
Yeah. And I think that's probably why we see 009 sales.
It's crazy.
As large
Yeah.
as they are.
Absolute craziness.
Right
Yeah.
there. You
Yep.
see a lot of those units going in, it says it right there. You know?
Crazy. Absolutely
So,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now I did notice that the manual's a little older. I don't know if they've done, I mean, not that it's that old, it's 5 years old. So we've been doing them for many years. So the 009s, I'm sure. So yeah, I'll have to look into that a little bit further there for you, gents.
Well, here's a good one from Dan Cook.
Cookster.
Is there a rule of thumb? If you wait X seconds to wait for hot water, then you should consider using recirculation. I've been testing my house this winter since I have been home during the lockdown, and I will get hot water to my upper tri-level bathroom in 10 to 12 seconds when it's 0 degrees outside. Therefore, I do not believe I need recirculation. I would agree with that. No, you do not. The kitchen faucet, the kitchen is the only faucet more than 15 to 20 feet of pipe away from my water tank, and I can wait for the hot water in the kitchen. My dishwasher has heater elements to heat the water up, as discussed. Just asking if there's a rule of thumb. I don't.
Yes, there is.
Okay, Rick says yes, Dave says no, and I say maybe.
Absolutely,
Let's go around
there
the
is.
horn.
Well, each person's different. Each person's different. It's a pain point on their end. Right?
No. How he's asking, is there a parameter that should be used to determine, right? So yeah, you're right. When you were talking that people don't even know they should have instant hot water. So for instance, if in the areas where they're actually looking at recirc, mandating it, and then testing it when it's said and done to see if it works or not, you better have hot water there in less than 10 seconds or less is considered really good, but you shall not wait more than 30 seconds. So there's the two numbers. If you're 10 or less, no one's going to ever give you a problem. If you're waiting 30 seconds or more, that's unacceptable and it won't pass on a code.
Right, that's coming into code now, right? You
Yeah.
know, so that's all part of code and distances and things like that. But if you've got an existing home, code is applying to
Right,
new
right.
construction today.
Exactly.
You got an
Exactly.
existing project, then it's down to a pain point. You know, your own personal pain point. Oh, it's not a big deal. I'll wait for it. All right, which I've
And apparently Dan's layout's really good.
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
you
you
got a
hit a home run there.
yeah,
Now,
you got a house that's stacked. You don't really need to recirc much. You mean, and what I mean by stacked is here's the
Yep.
water heater, here's the first fixture, another one sharing the wall, and it goes straight up to where the master bath is. There you go. You
Yeah,
basically
you're
got
good.
the length, you know, the height to get there. So
yeah. And I think I'm kind of in the middle. I think it depends. I think there's no downside if 30 seconds is a cutoff point there. If you're waiting more than 30 seconds, there is zero downside to having a recirc system. Other than the cost to put it in, there's really no downside. You know, and then it's up to each customer to say, well, you know, this is going to save me what, 15, 20 seconds. I want to spend 600, 800, whatever bucks it is to save that kind of time. I'm good, man. I'm good. Okay. You know what? God bless you. That's great. If you're waiting 2 minutes, we're having a different discussion with that same guy. Okay.
Yep.
So as Dave said, where's the pain point? Where is that particular customer's pain point? And usually I got a friend of mine and I asked him this once and I said, you know, because I was working on something. He says, what are you doing? I says, well, you know, just domestic hot water recirculation. He goes, what the hell's that? Here's the thing. No civilians out there, they have no idea what that word means. Domestic hot water recirculation. That sounds ominous. What the hell do I need that for? I don't live on Mars, man. You know, I'm not from the future. You know, I mean, what's that all about? But you know, so he asked me, what is it? And I said, well, you know, they're going houses there where you go to take a shower and you got to wait 2 minutes, 3 minutes for the hot water to show up and you're running all that water down the drain. We can fix that. And he says, you just described my life. So here's a guy who didn't know he knew he didn't like it, but he didn't know it was a problem. You know, I thought it was just something that was. I didn't know I could fix it. And then I told him, he said, they make things to take care of this? He goes, yeah, you know, that's what I sell. That's what we do, you know? And he said, okay, I think this could work, you know, and he wound up getting a system installed. And it's, you know, for him, he didn't know it was a pain point. He just knew that he didn't like waiting, but he didn't know that not waiting was an option. So again, what's acceptable, what isn't, and once someone knows that what they're experiencing isn't necessarily normal and does not have to be, then that opens up so many doors. So, is there a rule of thumb? You know what, honestly, I think Rick was right. It's 30 seconds. Anything over 30 seconds, you start the discussion, and then it's just a matter of how much. It's just a matter of where the pain point is at in that 30 seconds to, you know, 5 days, you know, or whatever the high end is that he's waiting for hot water.
Yep. Another thing also to think about, you know, so I'll tell you a story that was going on at my brother. My brother was doing some major remodeling to his home, more or less just added a second floor to his ranch. So I would stop by every once in a while, just see how the construction was going. And I said, all right, before the sheetrock occurs, call me. I want to run some pipe. I want to run a return line for you. So he's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hook up the circulator and we're going to take care of hot water, because they were using some of the existing plumbing in the house that was already there for the first floor and then going to feed the second floor. So I knew it was going to be a lot of pipe in there. So I stopped by a couple of weeks later and the house is rocked. And I'm like, really? What are you doing? He goes, oh, they just started, they just did it the other day. And I'm like, and you didn't call? He's like, well, I thought about it and we decided not to put recirc in. Why not? You know, and he says, well, because I don't want to spend the electricity. Living here on the Isle of Long at 22 cents a kilowatt, he's thinking that this circulator is going to be running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, using up electricity all the time. I said, are you kidding me? So, you know, and I kind of told him about the smart plug and now ECM circulator. So I did the math for my own house and I showed it to him. what it cost me a year electrically here on Long Island to run domestic hot water recirc with a smart plug with the schedule learned was about $6 a year electrically. $6 because I got mine turned down. All right, I found where it needed to run. What's that?
That's a number 7 value meal at McDonald's.
Yeah, it's one latte swinging by Starbucks.
You get
right?
one latte at Starbucks, right?
One latte at Starbucks was the electrical costs involved in it.
Or one peanut butter and blue cheese sandwich.
Ooh.
So it wasn't a lot of cost. Now, guess what's in my brother's house? Now,
Crossover valve.
hot water. Oh, yes, that's right. Crossover valves, because his wife had to wait 4.5, 5 minutes for hot water in the morning because she gets up first. She's a school teacher. So we went and she's like, I'm waiting 5 minutes for hot water here because the plumbing came across the water heater's on one side. The master bath is actually, no, is on the other side of the house, but the water pipes come come across, and then back again to get to the master bath. Oh yeah. They went a little crazy on how they ran the pipes in this house. So because they were trying to reuse a lot what was there, and so just to tap in to get what he needed. So she was waiting 5 minutes in the morning.
You didn't happen to mention to her that her husband / your brother knew that he could have this installed but chose not to.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
okay, good. Yeah,
definitely.
If you're going to ruin your brother's life, that's a good way to do it.
She's like, no, you got to get back here. You got to get over here and fix this. Oh yeah, she knew that. She's like, how come I wait so long? I'm like, well, I decided not to do it. What? When did you become the expert in hot water recirc?
Now, there's another question. What would you call this if you're talking to a civilian, a homeowner, and domestic hot water recirculation sounds like it's from the future? What would you call it for a customer so that they understand what it does? What title would you give the concept? I'd like to hear from whoever's left out there. And we still got about 50 of you guys out there. What would you call it? It needs a name that isn't intimidating, that's understandable. So Zach says instant hot water.
That's subjective.
That is. It's subjective, but also you've got those little point of use Insta-Hot things at the counter that you can have installed.
Yeah.
All right, I had one of those and I loved it. All
Yeah.
right, because if you want to make tea, there's no better way to do that.
Ramen noodles.
Your ramen noodles, things like that. But then there's also what's the common term used for tankless water heaters? Instantaneous hot water. Instantaneous water heaters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how many conversations I've had with people said, well, why, if I buy an instantaneous water heater, why would I need your product? Well, there's a discussion there to be had too,
Yep.
you know? That thing's gonna make instant hot water, but it's still got to get from there to there, cowboy. I don't know how it's going to do that without a little help. You know, we got to give that water some giddy up, you know, to get it out there. Ooh, maybe that's it. Giddy up hot water. Or hot water giddy up. How about that? Hot water giddy up.
No thanks.
Okay, Rick's not on board. Dave?
We could polish it. We could figure that out. Yes.
There's some things you can't shine, and that might be one of them.
When he says that we could polish it, that means it's a turd.
Yes. Phil
Dave,
Van,
that was a good way of putting that. I didn't have
water.
to say it.
Faster hot water. Again, it's subjective because faster, you know, how fast is fast enough? I don't know. This is an interesting question.
Yeah.
I'd like that. We got to figure that one out. That could be, I'll tell you what, somebody out there wants to be in on next week's St. Patty's Day extravaganza with a job site tip or trick. This qualifies, I think, coming up with a great name for a great usable, understandable name for domestic hot water recirculation and understandable for the consumer, the end user, the homeowner. That would make for a good job site hack, I think.
Yeah.
Hot
and there's
water
less than 3% of homes out there. Less than 3% of projects have a hot water recirc out there. And we all know almost all of them need it.
So 3% of the homes have hot water recirc. Do you know what that means?
There's a lot of potential sales.
97% don't, right? And 97% don't. And if you're going to be selling something, you don't want to sell it to people who already have it. You know, go to something. So I think that's okay. That, you guys that are left, there's your homework for next week. And if it's a good one and it gets on our show, there's your homework. What name do you give domestic hot water recirculation for the
Novice.
civilian? So Jim, you're a bad man,
yes.
Jim. You're a bad man. Okay, Gustavo says, on my end, you don't need to explain to the customer why you do it. It's in the Florida code, and they have to do what we designed for the system. There you go. Otherwise, there's a release letter coming to them where you are not responsible for their uninformed decision to not do it. I love that. You know,
Yeah.
that's that. Again, they get out of jail free card. Now,
Yeah.
again, because I don't know Florida construction real. Yeah, new construction, I get it. Existing older homes that don't have it. Now, there's the application that we're looking at. You know,
Right. And also the new construction. Yeah, code already says you got to do it. Yeah.
yeah,
But
that you
even
don't need to,
construction that doesn't require.
you don't need a name for that. You just need
Yeah.
to put it in. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is new construction that doesn't require it across the country too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you still want to put it in? No. Yeah.
So many. I mean, I was talking about this in answering a question earlier. When I worked with the tools, the Massachusetts Plumbing Code had in the code book that if the farthest fixture was I think it was more than 50 feet.
50. Yep.
Yeah, 50 feet from the water heater, you had to have a recirc line. Do you know how many times in my career that was enforced? Zero, none, nada. Wasn't enforced. You know, and we used to joke about it. If it was a commercial application, they would ask for that. In residential applications, never enforced. It was on the books, but it was never enforced.
All right. With the 50 some odd people left here, in case you're not sure what John was talking about with the tips and tricks for next week. All right. Next week's class. I'm still looking for them. Still need to get some tips and tricks and or pay it forward, as I think would have been a better name for it way back when. What is something that you learned from somebody when you were working out there, or something you learned on your own that you had to, learn through the school of hard knocks, and you wish you could teach somebody else this? So, some little tip, some little trick that you would find, either one in the boiler room, in life, running your own business, whatever it is. So we want to be able to pay that forward in this instance next week. We want to be able to pass that information along to those of you out there just starting, or maybe you never even heard this before too. So that's next week's class. Please submit those in. You can send me an email. davhol@takocomfort.com. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. If you want to post it yourself on any of your social media, use Taco Comfort Tips as your hashtag. So then I'll end up finding that too and including it into next week's presentation. And everybody that submits something is going to get a little gift from me. If it gets used, then you get a bigger gift. And then at the end of the class, when I go through all of them, there will be a poll, an online poll, where you will get to choose the best one out of all the tips that come in. And the one that wins gets the grand prize that I've got behind me here. So next week's class, so you want lunch for a week to stay cold in your truck? There you go. Or warm. This thing is great for keeping stuff warm too. If you warm this thing up first and then you put your food in, it's going to stay warm for a couple of days. So cool, amazing Yeti cooler there. So.
Hey, and speaking of warm, it's going to be 64 degrees in Exeter, New Hampshire tomorrow.
Wow.
And 58 on Friday, which, if you've checked my calendar, I have off.
Both days or Friday?
Just Friday.
Just Friday.
Although I could see myself being MIA tomorrow too. Oh boy, then it gets 41, 43, 32 on Monday, 37, 2. What the heck is going on here? Then we get
It's
back in the
still
40s
March.
again. That's March. March just messes with your mind. Oh God. All righty. Well, excellent. Hey, this was another good session. We've been at this again. This 2-hour, 2.5 to 3-hour thing is becoming common, is it not? And that's again thank to you guys that are still hanging out there. I really, it's awesome. We really do appreciate the gift of your time, and I guess you wouldn't be hanging out with us if you didn't find it fun and useful. So we do thank you for that. I mean, we really try our best to put to make this not only informative, but fun too. So you have a good time while you're here. Because one thing we've learned is we learn better when we're having fun together as a group and enjoying ourselves. So really do appreciate the gift of your time, folks. It's been our privilege to be able to share these last 5 weeks with you and next week as well. And yes, you do get certificates. It'll be emailed tomorrow. It'll say the name of the class and 1 PDH at the end of it. So those will go out tomorrow, along with links to the long recording of this program. You may want to grab that just for no other reason to relive the peanut butter and blue cheese experience.
Hey, John.
Yes.
In your closing comments, I almost heard a Carol Burnett song come out.
I'm so glad we had this time together.
Yes.
Hold it. Right?
Yeah.
You know why she did that? Do you know why she tugged her ear at the end of singing that song?
No?
It was a signal to her mother to say goodnight.
Oh, something from childhood.
Yeah, it was just something she did just for her mother.
Right on.
Yeah. Does the recording include this question period? Absolutely. Yeah, we don't break it down. It's the whole shooting match, man.
Yeah.
And you only got to watch what you want to watch. When you turn it on YouTube, you're not committed to watching the whole thing, man. You can if you want to, but you can jump ahead to find the parts you want as well, Carrie. So yeah, whatever's easiest to you. So yeah, tomorrow, probably right around 7 p.m., you'll get an email that automatically generated email that will have a link to the recording, as well as the certificate, and a link to register for next week's class will be in that as well. So make it a little bit easier for you. And
anything else happening next week?
Say again?
Is anything else happening next week?
Oh yes, we got a big one next week. I told the group at the very beginning we're going to have two very special guests. Very special guests, Cheryl Merchant, the CEO of TACO, and Johnny White Jr., the owner of TACO, will be joining us in the second hour of our program to basically enjoy St. Patty's Day night with you guys.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be some green beverages imbibed upon during that time. And we will be having a good time. And they'll be here to answer whatever questions you may have about TACO, about the company's history, the company's direction, etc. I mean, the company is Johnny's life. He's the third generation of his family to be in charge of this company. His grandfather started it 101 years ago. Then his father took over, and Johnny took over in the early 90s. And his two sons, J3 and Ben, going to be taking over someday as well. So the company's in very, very good hands. And Cheryl has been our CEO for about 3 years now, I think, 2 or 3 years. And what an amazing background in manufacturing and in logistics and in operations. She's not so much a product person. Like you want to talk to her about circulators, that's not what she's there, but she's about manufacturing and processes and what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable internally. And just a great breath of fresh air. And you want two straight shooters that'll tell you exactly what's on their mind. You don't have you do want to make sure you come to that, because it's going to be an awful lot of fun.
Right on.
Good ones. All right. I didn't know
and
that was
the three of us can dominate a conversation. Wait till you get the two of them. We're just going to fade into the background.
That's right. I
might turn my camera off.
Yeah, there you go. All righty, folks. Hey, thank you so much again. And we will see you next week.
Boom.
Enjoy all.
There you go. All right. Dave, come on. Closely spaced tees. Let's go, buddy.
There's my
You
closely
too.
spaced.
I got, yeah.
Non-compliance,
Goodbye,
non-compliance.
goodbye,
Catch you
goodbye.
later.
Take care, everybody.
Enjoy.
Bye-bye.